cheaper as the guys in the Brian are for $100.
And you're muted.
We're
Unmuted. Okay. All right. I think we're rolling on that end. So we're just gonna do a quick walkthrough on the ground rules and then some other housekeeping items real quick.
Yeah.
So the page. So, yeah, page 2, ground rules. There you go. So everyone, we emailed, to kick this off though, we emailed all these materials out there versus through the two states compact process. We have plenty of printed copies here in the room, and hopefully everyone has a copy out there, and try to provide sufficient advance opportunity to read through this and kind of get understanding of what today's meeting is about. So jump in the ground rules here. Just be sure you're muted. If not, we will find you online and mute you for you. Secondly, if you're in the room and there's sidebar conversations, I will say these speakers are very sensitive. So no sidebar conversations. If you need to talk to someone, the lobby's fine for that. We are not using the chat for public comments. We're using it for like a technical assistance if you have issues out there. And we'll cut, so we're only monitoring from that standpoint, not actively for input for the meeting. Under the public comment portion here, there's a few things I'm going to walk through. We as staff have the, we may swap between in-person and virtual, depending on how many hands are coming up in either side. So, and also, from those we've heard from a lot to those we have not. We want to hear from everyone. So we may jump around our speaking list as needed, but we will try to provide everyone sufficient opportunities to ask questions, get clarifications, or provide their input. In the room, just raise your hand, and then if we don't recognize you or don't acknowledge you, make sure you state your name. We'll get you on the speaking list. Those online, there's a raise your hand feature, or you can use on the phone, I think *5, and or alternatively, you can just come off mute and state your name when we're looking for names to add to the speaking list. For those online, if you can't figure out how to mute it, your phone, *6 works. Also, you can use your own phone to do that as well. Be sure to identify yourself when speaking so everyone knows who is who. We will try to keep the discussion focused on the agenda today. So we're, for example, talking about summer and fall fisheries. Keep discussions, keep personal threats or any negative connotations, leave them outside this room. This is inclusive environment. We're trying to hear everything what everyone has to say. We ask everyone to speak and act professionally, listen to others while they're speaking. Please be aware of how long your comments or discussion or point is taking. We only have so much time to work through today to get to hear from everyone. If you don't need to reiterate something, don't worry about that, and we'll move. You can move on to a different topic, or you can, if you want to support someone else's comment, you can say, I support what I just heard, instead of having to reiterate everything. And provide constructive feedback regarding the fisheries in which you participate. That helps us. We also want to understand the why, besides just what you want and prefer. State staff may close or limit comment to stay on schedule and move on if necessary. I mentioned that we're recording this meeting. And further comments, we do have a link online that you can provide your comment, and we'll circle back on that a bit more. For those in the room, got exits behind you there across the room from me, or kind of out through the front lobby where you came in. The restrooms are behind us, adjacent to the lobby as well. The building is secured beyond that. And then Wi-Fi, guest Wi-Fi on the whiteboard and on various sheets of paper taped to the wall if you need to get online. And I hope everyone's in the parking lot because that's where you're supposed to be, not on the street because there's no parking along the road. Checking in, Charlene, Shirley, anything else on facilities? Or Captain Wickersham, anything else on facilities? No? Okay. With that, we'll go back to the agenda. And we have a lot of people online, but I just want to, I'm going to expedite introductions a bit to save us time, because when everyone speaks, we ask that you'll identify yourself, but we'll just do a quick in the room staff introduction around the table, just so everyone online knows who's here, at least from that standpoint. So we'll start on my left.
I'm Shannon Conley. I'm the Columbia River Policy Analyst
Morning,
with Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. Sorry.
good morning, everybody. My name is Kelly Cunningham. I'm the Director of the Fish Program for WDFW.
Good morning, Kyle Loddix, WDFW Intergovernmental Salmon Manager.
Beth Dacey, WFW, I'm the Columbia River Fisheries Sampling Coordinator.
Good morning, Shirley Cummings, Admin Assistant, Fish Program.
Tucker Jones, Columbia River Ocean Salmon Program Manager for Oregon Fish and Wildlife.
Good morning, Dr. Charlene Hurst, WFW, and the Columbia River Division Manager.
Hello, John North, Oregon Fish and Wildlife, Deputy Fish Division Administrator for Marine and Columbia River Program.
Quentin Doherty, WDFW, I'm a fisheries management biologist.
Hannah Moore, ODFW Fisheries Analyst for the Columbia River.
Cameron Duff, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, Select Area and Estuary Fisheries.
Rob Reagan, Oregon Fish and Wildlife, project leader for the Lower Columbia and Lower Willamette recreational fisheries.
And then back row. And speak up.
Communication Specialist for Region 6. And Region 5.
I'm Brett Splasser. I'm with Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, and I'm the Fish Program Manager for Southwest Washington, Region 5.
Hi, good morning. My name is Jeff Wickersham. I'm the Enforcement Captain for Southwest Washington, Washington Fish and Wildlife.
Russell Holowatz, WDFW, District 10 Fish Biologist, Tributary Parks Manager, and I work with our other Tributary Manager who's not here today, Matt Gregg.
Jeremy Wilson, WDFW, Southwest Washington, Hatchery and Fisheries Policy Analyst.
I'm Jeff Whistler, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, Columbia River Fisheries Manager.
And if I didn't already introduce myself, I'll do it again. Ryan Lothrop with WFW Columbia River Fishery Manager. I know we have staff online, but I'm just gonna just seeing if there's additional staff online, but we'll just wait. If anyone comes off mute, we just ask that you'll identify yourself. So next on the agenda is kind of the agenda overview. So a couple things are going on. First, if you're in this room or can see this room from virtual computer or phone, we are in a different layout. We're in a round table, rectangle. It's actually rectangle, but the round table concept to have more engagement, rather than a hearing approach. So we're hoping that helps. Obviously, we have to balance virtual versus in room, so we will be doing that as necessary. In today's meeting, it's a bit blast from the past. We're having a commercial and recreational breakout as well at the same time. So the way this meeting is going to go is we have this overview. Everyone's in the room together, kind of do a quick check of last year and this year's overview, and then we will break out into commercial recreational discussion. So the commercial, those interested in commercial meeting, there's a separate link, and that's provided in the agenda, and those in the room would go accompanying state staff to the library, and that's where that meeting will take place to walk through options as well, the fishery structures. And then the recreational discussion will stay in this room, and those online do not have to switch lines. So I hope that helps on that end. So when we get into breakouts, there's a lot, get a lot more into detail about this year's fishery. So we kind of ask that when we get to questions and answers that, you might reserve those for the discussion unless you have overarching questions about last year's review or the high level overview guidance for this year's fisheries. The more time we save on this front end, the more time we have for the recreational and commercial discussion. So just keep that in mind. So next steps after today, and we will not be making a decision, staff, today on what we're taking to the council to finalize our fishery approach, but we're taking input today and beyond a bit today. And so we will coalesce around one approach for commercial and recreational fisheries into the council process. We do have the link here as well on the agenda that you all can circle back on, provide comment, and or let your colleagues and fishing friends add comments as well. We are encouraging everyone to provide your comments for the fisheries through this Sunday, as we will review the comments come Monday. And we do use that forum for rulemaking as well. So just, it does go in the record formally as well, rather as opposed to, say, one-off emails are kind of more of a challenge for us to work with. So we ask that public comment input forum is utilized. And then many of us will be heading to California for the council process April 10th to finalize the seasons. And then once those are done, we have the 2 links there for each state. That's where we provide the fishery summaries for the 2025 season. So before we dive right in, Jeff, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, you covered it, right? Thanks.
Okay, so we are moving on. Yep. So the first item is going to be fishery guidance and conservation objectives. And then followed by that, we will do a quick walkthrough of 24 returns and fishery review, followed by considerations for 25 fisheries. I'll cover the first 2 sections. Jeff will cover the last one. And then so we're asking everyone to hold their questions or comments until we get through this overview presentation. And then we'll just get a speaking list. We'll come back to that. So I will kick us off on the packet. We have joint state staff reports that have a lot of detail. Those are posted online at the 2 links provided. The most recent spring summer fisheries it was online January 31st, and this from this past fall's fishery input into that report will be available this July. But if you want to look at historical detailed information, the fall joint staff report is still relevant and online. In the Columbia River, we are to manage the fisheries, and within the Endangered Species Act limits. We do receive an annual NOAA guidance letter, and more on that a little bit later. That kind of provides guidance. Does provide guidance to the parties that fish. We have the USV Oregon Management Agreement, the 2018 through 2027, that's in effect, and the associated biological opinion that provides the ESA coverage. And then we have these State of Oregon and Washington Commission guidance on salmon harvest, and it's a policy guidance. I'm not going to walk through this in much detail since it's been out there. But the overview is by the different species and runs of fish. It's a salmon policy and provides guidance from the commission level to state staff for implementing fisheries based on various allocations by sectors and even areas, as well as commercial gears by season. So all the details are in there. If there's questions on that, we can come back. But just again, this is a high level overview. But near the end, just the one nuance on all this on page 2 in the middle of the page, commercial alternative gears. There is a emerging commercial fishery process going on, utilizing 2 percentage points for ESA impacts. So that's an Oregon rule, and Washington is implementing that version of it. So I just wanted to flag that's a little different than direct guidance from the Washington Commission. Additionally, there's the WFW and Colville Tribal Upper Columbia Management Agreement. This pertains to Upper Columbia summer snook and sockeye, and that is focused on co-management and the harvest sharing of those fishes, those species. So that's policy guidance. There's a lot there, and we will circle back on what is being implemented for 2025 later in this document. For 2024 returns, starting with Upper Columbia summer snook, the run size came in under forecast by about 20%, so the final run is 42,500. The sockeye run, which is primarily driven by the Okanagan and Wenatchee stocks, turned out to be, based on our records, a historic high return, 761,682 fish. The Snake River Wild and Upriver Bright all snook came in above forecast as well. Do want to note that, well, the Upriver Bright run came in about 22% above forecast and 36% above for the Snake River Wild. The allowable harvest rates on both Upriver Bright and Snake River Wild is 15% for non-treaty fisheries. Postseason, you can see that the Upriver Bright harvest rate there on top page 3 ended up being at 15.8%. And what is not shown there, should have included it, but it's I'll speak to it. The Snake River Wild harvest rate was 15.2%. So that is above the non-treaty allowable harvest rate of 15%. That is due to the last in-season run size estimate that we had back in October was 342,800 fish. The final run came in about 25,000 fish less. So that's the final run came at 318. So that overage is due to that final run size coming in under the last in-season run size estimate. What's important there on the Snake River Wild and Upriver Bright, though, is both treaty and non-treaty, when combined, came in under the allowable 45% harvest rate. On the Lower Columbia River Tule Fall Chinook, that came in above forecast at 114,430. The allowable exploitation rate was 41%. We came in under that, 30.8%. Both the ocean and river came in under their preseason exploitation rate expectations. For Columbia River Coho, the run came in above forecast, 184% of the forecast. And the limit there on the Lower Columbia River natural ESA component is 23%. It was a constraining stock during preseason planning. The final ER on that was 11.8%, so about half of what was allowed and planned preseason. Both the ocean and river came in under what was planned. For summer steelhead, preseason forecast, postseason estimates are not made for Lower River Skamania summer steelhead. However, for last year, we estimate a minimum of 66,200 hatchery orders in Lower River Skamania stock steelhead returns. And then for upriver summer steelhead, so Skamania, upriver Skamania, A index, B index, all came in above forecast, 142% of the forecast. And final steelhead modeling is complete yet on that, but we are expected to be well within the 2% limit of each of the components. So moving on to the recreational fisheries review of 24. Not going to walk through all these words that are written down here. A lot of this information has been out for a while. The 2024 review, 2025 expectations document captured a lot of this as well. But I'll hit some high notes. Or high level maybe. For the summer Chinook fishery, that was open for 4 days for harvest. And that ran as scheduled. But in conclusion of the summer Chinook fishery, the run size, as I mentioned, came in about 20% below forecast. So that meant that the recreational allocations were exceeded from the run size downgrade. So there was no additional opportunity in season. For sockeye, we obviously, in the end, turned out to have a record return, but that we had high catch rates in the sockeye fishery, and that led to an early closure, even with a historic high return. And that the closure was due to achieving the recreational allocation. For fall seasons, again, pretty high level. We had our preseason plan. You know, we were herb and snake river wild limited, but we had to address the lower river tules and planning the buoy 10 and other fisheries as well. But in conclusion, we had an overall increase in the fall Chinook returns. The upriver bright component came in above forecast and was updated in season, which that was the most constrained stock, so it led to additional opportunities. And additionally, all the recreational fisheries were rather clean on LRH usage as compared to the preseason plan. So that's what led to additional opportunities beyond what the preseason plan had for last year. I would note that the coho fishery and buoy 10 came in, I believe, above or close, yeah, above what we expected to catch. So that was, let's see. On the commercial fisheries, it's kind of the same story. We were herb limited, snake river wild limited. The fishery ran pretty clean on low river tules as well. And given the increased abundance on upriver brights, led to additional post-update opportunities for the zone 4 or 5 fishery. The coho tangle net ran as planned and came in, it looks like slightly above, the hatchery coho catch is slightly above the preseason plan, which was largely driven by the increase in abundance of coho. And then we had the limited alternative gear fishery, which only the seines participated. And they had limited fishing effort out there, and the catch is provided in there. And that fishery was managed based on individual fishery quotas. So that's the overview of that. Jeff, is there anything you want to circle back on?
No, you're speeding through. This is great.
Saving everyone time. So Jeff, I think you have the next section.
All right. So stick with the same theme here. Keep this fairly high level. Not read at you. This has been out there and available for folks to have read last night. So we're going to move into kind of a high level discussion over the consideration specific to this year. And then during the breakouts, we'll get into the details for both sectors. Is Tony on? So the first topic here we have that Ryan mentioned was the NOAA guidance letter. It doesn't look like we have anyone from NIMS on the call.
I'm here, Jeff.
Oh, there you are. Thank you, Tony. Yeah, so just briefly, this is a guidance letter that's produced by NOAA Fisheries annually that lays out their guidance relative to ESA for all of the West Coast stocks, including those specific that we encounter in the Columbia River as well. We provided a copy of that in the packets and the materials here, so everybody has that to read. Tony, is there anything you wanted to highlight or discuss on that topic?
Thanks, Jeff. Again, Tony, Senate School, No Fisheries. No, I don't think there's anything that I'd need to highlight at this time. Very similar to the guidance in terms of conservation objectives and harvest control rules from last year. If folks have questions at the end of this meeting, or if the state would like me to clarify anything, states would like me to clarify anything, please let me know.
All right, thank you, Tony. Yeah, I think that's going to be a common theme. Control rules and abundances are fairly similar to last year, so a lot of the expectations are also going to be similar to what we saw last year. So now we'll move into a section that covers some of the different species here. Again, high level. Start off with summer Chinook. The forecast is quite low this year, about 38,000 prior to the finalization of ocean fisheries planning and everything. That river mouth abundance will change slightly, but it's going to be right around 38,000 there, which means that there's not enough allocation in river for directed summer Chinook fisheries this year. We'll get into the details of that in a little bit, but just wanted to throw that out here at the top. There should not be any expectation, at least from a preseason standpoint, of directed summer Chinook harvest. There will be enough to allow for steelhead and sockeye fisheries, most likely. So the sockeye forecast is for about 350,000, which is right at the 10-year average return. WDFW expects the Wenatchee escapement goal to be met, so no issues anticipated on that front. And just a reminder to everyone for non-treaty fisheries downstream of Highway 395 bridge, we have an allowable ESA impact rate on the endangered Snake River sockeye of 1%, which translates to a total harvest of aggregate sockeye, not, so the number here says 3,500, but that's for the aggregate Columbia River return. That's not 3,500 Snake River sockeye forecasted. So, but the basic assumption we use to manage these fisheries downstream of the mouth of the Snake is that the handle rate on the aggregate return and the listed Snake River component is the same. So once we harvest 1% of the aggregate return, the assumption is we also met that 1% harvest limit on the listed component. And commission guidance on allocations is non-concurrent this year. Once again, which results in an allowable allocation of 70% of those harvestable fish to recreational fisheries, 20% to commercial for incidental harvest, and another 10% that remains unallocated due to the non-concurrence. Now, as we mentioned here, directed sockeye fisheries are not allowed by either state's rule or policy for commercial fisheries, and that allocation will be available for incidental harvest and Chinook directed fisheries. The summer steelhead forecasts have been out since late February. Just wanted to note that we don't make formal forecasts for the low river Skamania summer steelhead stocks, but there are forecasts available for the upriver summer steelhead components, which includes an upriver Skamania and the A index and B index pieces. That forecast is quite low again this year. Forecasting steelhead is very difficult. I wouldn't put a lot of stock in the number itself. The message here is that the expectation is for another very low summer steelhead return in 2025. And given that, we'll expect to have several of the same types of fishery restrictions to minimize harvest and encounters of steelhead, both hatchery and wild. Those would include minimum mesh size restrictions in the zone 4-5 commercial fishery, and the rolling block closures and reduced daily bag limit that we've had in the recreational fisheries here over the past 10 years or so. For fall Chinook, the aggregate forecast is for about 718,000, which is higher than last year's preseason forecast and somewhat higher than last year's actual return. As with summer Chinook return forecast, that number will change slightly after the ocean fisheries are planned and modeled out, but it should be right around that number. And as we mentioned at the top, constraints are expected to be similar this year as to what we had last year, given the allowable ESA impact rates, and the abundances are also similar. So the commission's guidance from both states is concurrent on fall Chinook, and no less than 30% of the most constraining stocks of commercial fishery, and no more than 70% recreational fisheries. And there is some non-concurrence in allowable gear, but due to that, large mesh gill nets will only be fished in zones 4-5 this year. Our objectives for planning out this year's fisheries are to provide consistency in the fisheries, reduce the need for in-season closures, but everyone needs to understand that we cannot guarantee, that no closures will occur. We've all been here for a while and seen how it goes, but we can plan as best as we can, but we still have to deal with in-season information as it comes out. Moving on to page 8 there, we've got the LCR Thule harvest control rule, which shows based on the preliminary forecast of LRH of 121,500, allowable exploitation rate of 41%, which is shared between in-river and ocean fisheries. And based on the URB and Snake River Wild forecasts, the allowable in-river non-treaty harvest rate is 15%, will be 30% for treaty fisheries. So we've got a table here in the middle of the page that has also been out in public for quite a while, which just shows the February forecast from last year, the actual returns reconstructed postseason, and the February forecast by stock for this year. As you can see, the LRH is expected to be higher than last year, as well as the Bonneville pool hatchery. So those are the two Thule stocks. There's gonna be a lot of Thules around this year. The URBs are expected to be a little higher than forecasted last year, but real similar to the actual return that we saw last year. Other bright stocks in above Bonneville are those PUBs, pubs. That's expected to be real similar to last year's return. And in the lower river, we've got that select area bright stock as well, which doesn't contribute a lot in these days, unfortunately. Moving along to coho, the ocean abundance preseason and pre-fishery forecast is for about 480,000 adults, comprised of about 338 early stock and 142,000 late stock. Based on the harvest control rule for the LCN listed components, there's an allowable exploitation rate limit of 23%. That is also shared between ocean and river fisheries. These fish may be a constraining stock during the PFMC modeling this year. And we also wanted to note that there's a USP Oregon requirement to allow 50% passage at Bonneville Dam of fish that are expected to have originated from areas upstream of Bonneville. And then finally, chum, there's no allowable harvest, directed harvest in either recreational or commercial fisheries. And we do have a 5% harvest rate as far as the ESA impact limit goes on those fish. So that finishes up the species and stocks that we're considering here for the summer and fall fisheries. Wanted to note that the states are expecting limited alternative gear commercial fisheries to occur again this year, as they did last year. This is part of WDFW's emerging commercial fishery process. The two states are working together on that, and there's an agreement to set aside 2% of the allowable ESA impacts from the non-treaty share for use in those fisheries, and we've done that in our modeling scenarios that we've laid out here later in the document. And then the next is preseason ocean modeling. Just got done with March Pacific Fishery Management Council meeting where these initial alternatives were modeled out. That information has been provided in the materials here. There's also some web links there to go get more information. And I'll pause here to see if either Kyle or John want to speak more to the ocean fishery planning process.
Thanks, Jeff. I'll speak to the North of Falcon ocean fisheries. As you said, there's a 6-page handout in the meeting materials and a link to a document on the council website. More information. The council met in Vancouver last month and set the 3 alternatives for salmon fisheries off the coast of Washington, Oregon, and California. The quotas for those alternatives were for North of Falcon. For Chinook, alternative 1 was 122,500. Alternative 2 was 112,500. Alternative 3 was 92,500. That compares to a quota in 2024 of 82,000. So the higher abundances that you pointed out, the Lower River Hatchery and Bonneville Pool Hatchery, led us to some larger Chinook quotas this year. For coho, the quotas were, and these are all marked coho, and alternative 1, 120,000. Alternative 2, 115,000, and alternative 3, 85,000. That compares to a 2022 quota of 95,000. You may recall last year we had a relatively low forecast, came in a lot higher, so that coho quota really drove all the ocean fisheries with all of the recreational areas closing early due to achieving their coho quotas. Pages 33 and 34 of the document, actually pages 2 and 3, but they're numbered from the bigger document, outline the commercial troll fisheries for North of Falcon. Won't go into a lot of detail here. They have progressively lower sub-area caps for the area north of Queens River and the Columbia River area as you step down through the alternative, and lower landing limits per vessel and spring fishery as you step through them. One of the other differences in the options is the split of the Chinook catch between the spring and the summer fisheries, with alternatives relating to having 2/3 of the catch in the spring and 1/3 of the summer, and alternative 3 having it split 50-50 between the spring and summer fisheries. Pages 47 and 48 have the recreational fisheries north of Falcon. Page 47 has the Nia Bay and Lapush sub areas, and the fisheries in those two areas are the same across both areas as you got through the alternatives. Both of them have a Chinook only fishery that opens on alternative 1, and then a species fishery that begins July 1 with a 2 salmon per day limit. As you step to alternative 2, there's a salmon 2 per day, no more than one of which may be a Chinook through July 6th. So opening June 28th through July 6th, it would be 1 Chinook, and then goes to 2 Chinook per day on July 7th. And then alternative 3, a June 28th opener, but just opening at 2 salmon per day on June 28th. And page 48 gets into the Westport and Columbia River sub areas. Alternative 1 is identical for the 2 areas. It starts with a only fishery from June 21st through June 27th, 1 salmon per day, and then beginning of June 28th, all salmon, 2 salmon per day, no more than one of which may be a Chinook. The alternatives are different for those 2 areas as you step into 2 and 3. For Westport, alternative 2 has a June 28th through August 2nd, 7-day per week season, all salmon, 2 salmon per day, no more than one of which may be a Chinook. And then beginning August 3rd, it changes to a 5-day a week, Sunday through Thursday fishery, again, 2 salmon per day, no more than one of which may be a Chinook. And alternative 3 for Westport has a June 29th through July 24th, 5-day per week, Sunday through Thursday fishery that then goes to 7 days a week on July 25th. Stepping down to the Columbia River area for alternative 2, it's the same as alternative 1, just with a later start date of June 25th. And then alternative 3 is a June 28th start, 7 days per week, 2 salmon per day, no more than one of which may be a Chinook. As always, these seasons, however they wind up being adopted, we watch them in season, have to watch the quotas in each area and make adjustments, either to slow the fishery down or speed it up, depending on how catches are looking relative to quotas and historic timing. That's all I had for north of Falcon. I don't know if you wanted to say anything about south of Falcon, John.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I guess I'll be more like overview approach, but yeah, March Council, South Falcon was very challenging. Yeah, it was rugged, very limited allowable, impacts available for Klamath Dock, particularly Sacramento forecast is poor. It was really hard to craft meaningful fisheries on both sides. And when we got done, we heard a lot of feedback at the public hearing that we didn't provide enough Chinook opportunity for recreational in the ocean. So we heard that loud and clear. So now we'll be looking to see what we can do to adjust things. We'll be talking with the SAS pro reps and see if we can swap some fish around and balance things out a little bit and provide some more summer recreational ocean Chinook opportunity. But coho looks about like last year. I think highest option was 42,000 marked select coho, and then we have the I think 30,000 non-marked. So yeah, we'll be down there again for another week of fun and see what we come out of it with.
I see the smile on your face. So when you say swap some fish around, are you thinking trade for something else, another stock, cocoa, red cocoa for Chinook, or?
Not necessarily. We'll have to see how things, maybe there's some, some troll within troll, maybe there's some fisheries. And we're dealing with 390 Klamath impacts coast of Oregon. So, 20 fish here and there can make a difference. So maybe Troll might give up a certain area that frees up some fish that we can then use for port side. So there's a couple options, but there's no easy way out, free lunch, you know.
Is California's directive looking to impact Oregon's like waters?
There's some potential issues still in flux there, but we'll deal with those when we get there. Yes. Yeah, I was, I haven't done it that long, but I would not want to do that again.
Well, I don't know how much to read into that, but okay. All right, thanks, John, thanks, Kyle, for that overview and information there. You know, as you can see, this is all a big coordinated, integrated process, right? Columbia River fisheries have to plug into the bigger picture. And that's why we're present at these meetings as well, at the council meetings, to make sure that we're following along with what the ocean is kicking out and making sure that our stuff fits in within that bigger picture. So with that, I think we're getting close to wrapping up this first part of the packet here. So just real quick, you know, specific to the fishery modeling that we're embarking in now. You know, we've got 15% allowable harvest rate on URBs and Snake River Wild Fall Chinook. We expect those will be the most constraining stocks again this year, as Ryan mentioned earlier. There is the 41% allowable for shared ocean and river fisheries on the LRH Tulees. That's the highest tier, so that gives us quite a bit to work with. I just want to note that those ocean fisheries do include Canadian and Southeast Alaska and northern fisheries. And they're still waiting on some information out of those, which is normal for this time of year. We don't always have all of that information available in March, but as we move into April council meeting, that information will get folded into the overall modeling. Then, as I mentioned, we need to make sure that our in-river fisheries are modified as the ocean fishery are being shaped to make sure everything is fitting. So the last part of this section here on page 9 kind of lays out some detail on the 3 different alternatives that came out of the March council meeting. And as you can see, just kind of comparing with the allowable thresholds, you know, 41% on LRH, 23% on Coho, and 50% upriver Coho Bonneville Passage criteria, that not all of these are fitting quite yet. Some of them aren't fitting, some of them aren't maxed out yet. There's a fair bit of shaping and work still to be done on these, but these are the alternatives that came out of March council. And just one thing to point out that you know, alternative 1, the high alternative, so that's higher harvest in ocean fisheries, which means return to the river will result in lower abundances, and alternatively, the low alternative 3, harvest in ocean fisheries, is a little bit lower, and so the return to the river could be higher. That's really apparent when you look at the summer Chinook river return expectations that come out of those 3 alternatives. And then finally, on page 10 here, just a grab bag of bullets here on next steps, considerations, et cetera, et cetera. Many of these we've already kind of walked through some of the in-river sharing allocations, so we'll step through those again. But the 4th bullet down, did want to highlight that one, and just, you know, as we are modeling out, you know, both the commercial and recreational fisheries, you know, with the understanding that URBs and SRWs are likely going to be most limiting to the fisheries this year. We have to make sure we're balancing throughout, you know, all the areas use of those fish, but also understand that the stock comps are different in different areas of the river and at different times fishery as well, right? These fisheries run from August through the end of the year and occur, you know, in over 200 miles of river. So there's a lot that can change both in time and space there. Also wanted to mention that specific to, fall Chinook recreational fisheries, unlike policy and rule guidance that we have from the commissions for our spring and summer fisheries, there are no specific sub-area allocations of impact use for fall fisheries. We don't manage that way. We manage for Chinook retention opportunity and make sure, and try to build a preseason plan that provides as much opportunity as possible. And then the understanding is that based on fishery performance, those impacts will be shifted and moved into different fisheries to take advantage of those as we can. We did a lot of that last year. As Ryan stepped through last year's kind of review summary, there was a fair bit of Chinook opportunity added to the preseason plan in season last year based on both fishery performance, fisheries that had occurred earlier and lower in the river, and also the in-season abundance update as well provided additional opportunity there too. So that's how we manage our fall fisheries. It's different from spring and summer fisheries. Just want to make sure that folks hear that. We're still working on coho modeling. We expect that fisheries and opportunities will be very similar to recent years, given the abundances that we've got expected this year. And then, so the next part of this meeting is going to be breaking out into the sector-specific breakout discussions. Just wanted to highlight that we did meet with both advisor groups last month for some initial discussions and initial thoughts. And we used a lot of that input that we got from the advisor groups to shape the concepts that we're bringing to the discussions here today. We rely on the advisors to provide us good input, but we also want to hear from everybody else as well. So they helped us get a start here, and then we'll have some in-depth discussion this afternoon on the details. That's about all I want to cover on the advisor group pieces. Just also want to note that we do need to make sure that we have Chinook mortalities available for any time that Chinook retention is closed, and we intend to keep either steelhead or coho fisheries open. There's still going to be encounters of Chinook, so we need to be able to account for that in our fishery monitoring. And we're still working on steelhead modeling as well, but we'd expect those restrictions and regulations to look very similar to what we've seen here in recent years. And we expect that, as has been the case for several years now, to be well within the allowable ESA impact rates on the wild summer steelhead stocks. I think that covers the first part of the packet, and we've got a fair bit of time for discussion here now, which is our goal.
Yeah, so thanks, Jeff. So we try to move through this quick to save time. We're doing decent, but we can fall behind to potentially, or if you're looking at the clock, we're hoping to get the breakouts together around 11:30. I wouldn't be opposed to getting there quicker if we don't have a lot of questions, but the goal is 11:30 for the breakout. So just bear that in mind. So with that, we really are, if you have questions about or comments about this year's recreational or commercial fishery, reserve that for the breakout. If you have questions or comments or thoughts on what you just heard in the information just presented, a little bit last year, mostly this year's considerations as an overview, that's, we're here for answering some questions, or if you have thoughts, throw it out there. So anyways, I'm just going to jump in and take a speaking list. There's the ground rules. I'm not going to walk through them again, but if I have to, I will. So go ahead and raise your hand in the room or out there virtually, and I'll add you to the list, and we'll go through that. Okay, got Andrew. Okay. Then I've got Jessica. Sorry, I'm just creating a list real quick. Don. Anyone else? Okay. I'm not going to guarantee there'll be a last call, so try it now if you want to. Okay, I'll go in order of the hands and stuff I saw. So, but Andrew.
I was just wondering if we had any idea of overall if angler effort was up or down in 2024 as compared to, say, 2022, 2023.
Across the board, or you start talking about?
Across the board.
Okay. I don't have that at my fingertips. Does anyone else have?
I'll have it here shortly.
Yeah, Tim?
Okay, we'll come back to that. Thanks. Jessica? Jessica, you can come off mute.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
We got you.
Perfect. Hi, thanks so much for letting me speak today. My name is Jessica. I'm the harbor master here for the Warrenton and Hammond Marinas. And I just wanted to highlight how critical the buoy 10 season is here to our local marinas and our whole community. The Warrenton and Hammond Marinas operate as an enterprise fund. So the majority of our budget comes directly from our marina users, and buoy 10 is our biggest fishery. A strong season is essential for not only funding much needed repairs and improvements, but it also supports our entire local economy. Many small businesses rely on buoy 10 anglers for their livelihood, and a successful season really sustains our entire coastal community. So I just really urge you guys to consider the best season possible, a longer season, allow us to fully utilize all of our assigned impacts. Last year, I've heard we've only used around 9% of our upriver bright impacts, significantly leaving a lot of significant opportunity on the table. And we really wish that we could stress and just how much the Mark Select regulations really kill our season and make people move upriver where they can keep any fish. That really hurts us. And our marinas are just in critical condition and need help. And we need fishermen to be here and stay here for the whole month of August at least, but ideally into September, and have a lot of ocean opportunity as well. I think that's it. Just thank you. We really look forward to another buoy 10 season, and we can't wait to see everybody.
Thank you, Jessica. Appreciate that. Hugh, do you still need more time?
Yeah, I have that. Yeah, okay. Generally speaking, yes, there was more angler trips than what we had seen in 22 and 23. The lower Columbia River was around 121,000 trips, and buoy 10 was around 99,000 trips. The 10-year average at buoy 10 is about 88,000, and then about 95,000 for the LCR, which is WPI. I forgot. Oh, that's on, isn't it?
Just have to go closer.
Actually, it went off. Anyways, the LCR, I don't know if that's working very good, but was 121,000, and the 10-year average is about 95,000. So definitely seen more, and then of course Zone 6 has been picking up each year. So that was higher too.
Thanks, Quentin. So I see a couple more hands. Just want to acknowledge. I see David, Reed. I have you on the list, and then Jen. So I will keep going down my list. So Dawn, you're up next. Dawn McBride.
Okay, can you hear me?
We do.
All right, thanks. Well, this is kind of a common theme I've been spreading the last few times I've called, and I'll just do it again. Just wanted to remind folks again, a lot of the fish that are coming up the river are not wild Chinook that are spawning in the reach. A lot of the component is hatchery. A lot of it is going up the Snake. So I just urge, as we're setting both the commercial and rec seasons and allocations, that we keep in mind the need to pass enough wild Chinook up into the reach to meet our spawning escapement. We've been marginal the last few years, even though the runs have been good. So primarily that really comes into play if you do any in-season adjustments and updates. Just ask you to really keep that in mind. That's really all I wanted to share. Well, I just wanted to comment earlier. someone said, there's over 200 miles of fishing. Well, guess what? River mile 346 is Tri-City. So there's more than 300 miles, almost 350 miles there to worry about fisheries, not 200. Thanks. That's it.
Thanks, Don. David Reed?
Good morning. Thank you for the time. I'm David Reed. I'm the Executive Director of the Astoria Warrenton Area Chamber of Commerce, and we represent some 600 local businesses and organizations across all sectors of our rural economy. The buoy 10 fishery is a major economic driver for Hammond, Warrenton, Astoria every year. And launch fees, lodging, dining, guide fees, bait and tackle, processing, and other direct economic benefits during the fishermen are sometimes the difference between survival and failure for many businesses. Less obvious are the benefits to retailers, museums, attractions, and more that come with extended stays in our area by anglers and their families. If you add in the tertiary effects on the trades like plumbers and electricians who serve the businesses who in turn serve anglers, the total impact of buoy 10 fishery runs wide and deep in our economy. So closures of that fishery, even single day closures, particularly when they're only for the lower Columbia, really have a devastating effect on our community and commerce in many ways. I think you've addressed a lot of this already, but in the short term, we see that anglers and their families, they leave and they move upriver, taking their money with them. And those anglers are unlikely to return to our area during the same season. Having picked up and moved, they stay gone. In the long term, anglers begin to lose faith in buoy 10 staying open for the full season. So they're less likely to book down here at all. We already seen that effect locally, and last year's buoy 10 activity felt like it was really down for our retailers and businesses, despite some pretty good fishing. This year's bookings are showing some of those same signs, and it's really something we can ill afford, particularly right now. So I won't speak for Ilwaco and Chinook, but I would imagine they see the very same thing, and I'll leave it up to the people in this room to figure out how that gets fixed. But I would just encourage you to see what we can do to make that a certain and uninterrupted buoy 10 fishery becomes on your minds and in your planning. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, David. Jen, you can come off mute. Jen, your hand's up on Teams. You can come off mute. There you go.
I couldn't figure it out. Sorry. My name is Jen Fowler, and
oh, you're muted again.
there we go. Better?
Yes.
Okay. I'm kind of glad I'm following David Reed because I'm kind of echoing what he had to say. I've been down, like I camped down here since 2000 for buoy 10, and we moved down here in 2018 and bought a business in 2021, all because of buoy 10. And I volunteer for a lot of things. I'm now the chair of the Marinas Advisory Board in Warrenton. I'm on the Astoria Warrenton Chamber Board that he just spoke. And then I'm on Warrenton Parks Alliance, and I also became a Solve team leaders because there's no one, we don't have the money down here to like clean the marinas and stuff. So I set up a Solve cleanup every year to go through the marinas. And we noticed something that David Reed said was that I wanted to point out is that there's a lot of people like me that don't really, we don't know all the information of all the stuff that you guys do. We just see the effect, and people come from all over the world to go to buoy 10, and they don't know about the season setting. They know what happened the year before. And so when the season got changed in 2022, that affected a lot of people when it got closed right before Labor Day. And a lot of people were really hesitant to book again because normally you have to book way in advance in order to fish down here for, the tourists. And that affected the next year. And then the next year, I understand that you guys tried something different, and having the closures on Monday, Tuesday, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday during the weeks was a nice idea. But, everyone comes down here and they just tell their families, I'm gone for the month and I'll be down there. You just know you're going to be down here for a whole month, and once you pack up and leave, you just don't come back. And I know that's hard to believe because it's a great fishery, but it's true. And then last year, again, because of the effects of the prior 2 years, everybody came early. Like usually people aren't here that first weekend, and it was packed that first weekend, and then it wasn't packed the rest of the time. So I just wanted to kind of echo what both the harbor master, Jessica McGowan and David Reed with the chamber said, and just I just want you guys to know from the people down here and the businesses down here that we appreciate that you're trying to get us the fish, and you're doing the best you can, but it's really, really important for all of us down here that we get it during the right time and all that good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. I have Larry Phillips. I'm going to do a last call on names. So anyone else? No one in the room? Okay. I don't see any other hands. So Larry, you'll be last for this point before we kind of wrap up to get ourselves set for the next part of our day. So go ahead, Larry.
Can you guys hear me okay?
We can now.
Thank you. Sorry. That fat finger, sorry. Appreciate it, guys. As you guys have heard, that there's lots of challenges, right? With how do we maximize opportunity? How do we reduce uncertainty? That's the big killer for so Larry Phillips, American Sport Fishing Association. The economic benefits of sport fishing associated with the state of Washington and Oregon just came out. We're pushing $6 billion of economic benefit to the state. So as others have mentioned, and that buoy 10 is right there up there with some of the most economically, socially, and important fisheries that we have in the state. So I guess my advocacy is for as much time on the water as we can get, but also with a realistic approach that we avoid uncertainty. The biggest challenge that we face on the coast is uncertainty. When we have to close a fishery, the businesses, the guides, the hotels, the staff, it's really, really difficult to adjust to a closure. I do have a question too, Ryan. I'm wondering how we've seen angler behavior in terms of shift when we've done, certain sections of the river marked selective and then other areas non. Have we seen an increase or a angler shift in terms of effort to other areas? The reason I ask that question is we have adopted a mark selective approach in recent years with an attempt to slow the fishery down, obviously target hatchery fish and maintain our commitments to conservation. I think what worries me maybe, and without a real good deep dive into this question, is that we might not be getting any benefit in terms of days on the water from it. We might just be shifting anglers to other areas. So I'm sure you guys have thought about that, but anyways, my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thanks, Larry.
Probably dive into that more detail during the breakout. I think
Yeah, Larry, we'll think about that question and see if we can circle back at that direct breakout. If that's all right.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Can we do a lot of that in the breakout?
Yes. Yep. All right. I said, okay. I will. I see Francis's hand is up. So that is, Francis, you are the final hand for this front end meeting part. Then we'll go into our breakout. So go ahead, Francis. You can come off mute, Francis. If you're on your phone, I think it's *6. There you go.
Hello.
We got you. Yes.
Okay. I just echo some of the previous comments about buoy 10 and the lack of predictability has caused undeniable shift in effort. People are going to go upriver where they can find the fish and where they can find the most lenient regulations. Mark Select is just a killer for the buoy 10 zone. I know we have to do it to save LRH. Mark Select and closure days the last 2 or 3 years have been too effective. We're not expending the available LRH. We're at the top tier of LRH at 41%. Last year, buoy 10 left 57% of that on the table. It's working too well. The only way buoy 10 can survive a mark select fishery is to maximize the number of non-select days until you butt up against whatever LRH you got. And we'd all prefer that the days be added on the front end in August because that's when the fishing is better, but we realize it's more expensive. Add the days in there incrementally. When you run out of LRH or can't get the next day, put the days on the back end because they're way cheaper. And that would be my strategy for getting the maximum opportunity, realistic opportunity, not catching 20 fish in a day and having to release 17 of them to find a quality fish. I don't think that's a meaningful opportunity for the vast majority of anglers who judge the quality of the experience with the number of fillets that they get when they get back to Jim Fowler's cutting table. Okay, people want to catch a fish and keep it. I mean, I love to see the rods fold all day too, but it is a little frustrating if you have to turn loose a boat limit of prime herbs when they're killing them non-select in the ocean and they're killing them non-select in the reach right above us, and we're the only reach being punished. So we got a lot of LRH potentially available. Let's use them to the highest and best use we can to get maximum access for upriver brights for buoy 10. And non-select days is the way to do that. I know it's a challenge. I appreciate you guys' efforts, and if you can keep that in mind, I'd be very, very appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. So I think a lot of that will be captured in our rec discussion, potentially maybe even built into one of the concepts that we'll walk through, but almost a good precursor for us to kind of walk through that information at the breakout. So with that, we're good on time. So the plan is to see. Okay, we're gonna since we're done a little quicker than I was hoping, or I was planning on at the latest. So we're gonna come back together at, it's gonna be a weird time, but 11:25.
Closing us early, Ryan?
Yeah, you get more time on the end of the opportunity. So 11:25, both breakouts will get rolling. For those who are heading to the commercial breakout, reminder, Beth right here will escort you to the library along with maybe some other staff. And there is a different link provided, and that is in the agenda. So bear with us as we get that room set up. And for the rec, we'll stay here. So we're going to go on mute and we'll get started at 11:25.
There you go. If you're doing it anyway, it's only a 2% difference.
Well, I guess the meeting's over.
All right, so we're just getting ourselves oriented here in the room. Just see. Mike Scharf, are we coming through?
I can hear you, Ryan, and we can hear you.
Okay, thank you, Leah. All right, you want to throw up the agenda for a second? Yep. Okay. So just do a quick overview of the rec discussion here before we jump right in. So we're going to walk through fishery modeling rationale and assumptions. Then we'll go into the main stem summer fall concepts. And then we'll shift over, have to switch screens up a little bit and do the Region 5 Washington tributary brief presentation. And then after that, that's where we want our conversation or discussion. So we're just going to try to get through everything first before we circle back, and then we have till 2 o'clock. So we've got hopefully plenty of time.
We got snacks.
Snacks and coffee, and for those here, if you're at home, you're on your own. Anything else, Jeff, before we jump in?
No, let's do it.
Okay. And I think we don't have any new staff introduction, so I think we're good on that end. All right, and though this meeting is still recorded and the same ground rules apply that I walked through beforehand. So we'll just go ahead and get started and try to save as much time for conversation later. So I will kick it off. So the objective here is for staff to get input to consider a single strategy walking into April council. We're not going to make a decision today. We're going to collect the input. We'll allow a little time over the weekend for online input as well through the www link there in the packet. And then we'll kind of circle around one concept for each area and have to make sure we hit all the policy objectives and harvest control limits. And then that's what we'll be modeling and solving to at the council, and then come out with our final preseason plan. Sounds simple, but there's still work to do. So some of the concepts and information we're providing is focused around, we had to kind of pick what March council alternative we use to inform modeling outputs. So we used the alternative 2, which is the middle medium option for Chinook. That results in a ocean river, and so that we have the in-river ER of 10.5%. That actually is aligned with where we landed at the end of last year preseason, so it's the same ER as last year's pre. That results in 40.4 on Lower River Tules, and then we'll be solving to up to 15% harvest rate for Upper Bright Snake River Wild, which is the most constraining. And then the output on that for the in-river allocation is about 2,400 summer Chinook through the system. And then for coho, we use the high alternative, and that one has a LCN coho exploitation rate of 21%, and of that 5.6% is in river. That does include our 25 expectations for buoy 10, but it does not have an updated in-river modeling. So still last year's in-river final expectation. So that will move when we come out of this and probably go up a bit. And then upriver coho passage, we have a target. We have for USV Oregon hit 50% at least, and we're on the output currently is saying 60%. So we're looking good on that upriver coho passage. The policy guidance for this year is 80% recreational, 20% commercial for below Priest Rapids Dam for summer Chinook. We are concurrent on those allocations this year. And then for sockeye, it's already reviewed 70% recreational. Fall Chinook, mentioned it many times. We'll probably mention a couple more times. We're herb SRW limited this year primarily, but that's what we're solving to for the no more than 70% recreational, but the most controlled stock for the policy guidance there. LRH can become limiting in season if catch rates or stock comp shifts in catch in season. And then there's always, pre versus post season, things can shift at the end, but really most of our work is on LRH is done pre-season. And that is a stock that does not get updated in season. The upriver brights is the key stock that does. Viable concepts, we mentioned we'll have to make sure we fit the 2% limits on the non-treaty wild A, wild B impact limits. And then scroll down. So then just a little bit of a lag on this. Okay, there it goes. Okay. So this is kind of a laundry list, so to speak, of things we've heard over the last 3 to 4 years, including this year, that we just kind of have like to, make sure we're hearing, where the concerns are, fishery structures preferred or not preferred. It's just, it's not overly detailed, but it's high level. And so, I'm not going to walk through them, but some of the new ones there, the sockeye closure, early closure last year it kind of came up. So that's added. That's a new thing on this list. Obviously, we have limited season closures. That's an old one. Mark select versus non-mark for various sections of the river. And just seeing, and then a new one there is the Warrior Rock Lewis River line. We'll come back to that at the end of the presentation to kind of focus in on what that's about. And yeah, some co-opportunities. There are some elements there that we're not considering for this year. I won't walk through those, but basically we're taking those off the list for consideration for a variety of reasons. Some of that is outside of our control, and some of it we're not prepared. It takes a lot more work to work through it. So that's why those are largely not being included. We did, Jeff mentioned earlier, had a rec advisor meeting in mid-March. So just highlighting that we took what we heard there and helped build what we have here. So page 12, last item there at the very top. Slide. So it got a little blurry. There you go. The objective here is similar to last year, to provide consistent, predictable fisheries, reduce the risk of in-season closures, but obviously there's always some risk. Obviously in season, we would try to get ahead of an issue as fast as we can, but things are dynamic in season, as you all are very familiar with. We'll be running snouts to do stock comp in season, catch estimates as we can, and we have updated run sizes in season for upriver stock. So there's a lot of things moving when we're in the midst of a fishery. So I think with that, we're going to focus a little bit more into the fisheries now, progressing our way in. On summer, highlighted that we have a very low summer Chinook forecast, and the resulting alternative to, I'm showing both two alternatives outputs that would translate into the below Priest Rapids Dam recreational allocation. There's several steps there to get there. Within the non-treaty harvest limits of Upper Columbia summer Chinook, the middle alternative produces 195 total allowable mortalities on Upper Columbia summers. The middle alternative provides, the high alternative provides 97. So it possibly can, who knows, we'll have to wait and see where it lands at the end, but it's likely to be somewhere in that range. We are not expecting Chinook directed Chinook retention in summer main stem fisheries below Priest Rapids Dam due to insufficient allocation, which you may remember 2018 and 19, where we had low forecasts that kind of led to the same place we're in this year. However, we do have some data that helps us estimate the non-target handle, like through sockeye and steelhead fisheries, and both of those numbers take some assessments, and we should be covered on the summer Chinook side as long as the run doesn't get much lower.
Is that just a low forecast, or is there something changed in
Yeah.
allocations in the ocean? Or?
Primarily, it's the low forecast. 38,000 fish is a low forecast. There obviously is the relation, the linkage with the ocean non-treaty fishery, which comes out of the non-treaty allowable harvest. That is a secondary piece, but primarily it's driven by the low forecast. If we had a forecast, I'm in a different conversation. Just to put it that way.
It seems like as you step through the different ocean plans, there's a higher rate of summers being caught in the ocean.
There are, yeah, and that's March, April, things will shift and they'll coalesce around something that, is agreed to by all the parties and states. So, yeah, I mean, Kyle, is there anything from a summer Chinook ocean thing worth sharing?
It's one of the things that's on everybody's radar as we look at the ocean alternatives. There are things we can do with at a given quota with timing of fisheries that can summers are in the ocean earlier, so we can do the ship catch out of the early part of the season, later in the season, results in lower summer catches. We look at similar things for Puget Sound stock. We've got a long list of ESA listed Puget Sound stock where we're trying to balance ocean harvest and Puget Sound harvest. We do in the ocean that's going to impact those stocks less. So that's the kind of thing we look at as we move into April and sort of zero in on a quota level and start looking at fishery shaping things to benefit the stocks that are most affected in a given year. And summers is one of those this year.
It was
Yeah.
interesting, we had the advisory meeting where Steve was talking. You know, the ocean typically doesn't catch the Chinook a lot, but now we're allocating, it's like summers to the ocean.
It's a predictive use with the season structure the ocean is considering. That's what those numbers are being generated. The difference that you remember from the rec advisor is then there's the postseason landscape, which is different. A lot of things can change between their stock comp abundances, fishery structure and season. So what we have to do is manage. So a couple things to keep in mind on summers is we have an escapement goal of 29,000 fish to the Columbia River mouth. We're above that, not by a lot. So it's already a small amount to work with. And of that, it's half to the treaty tribes and half to non-treaty. And of the non-treaty, we include ocean catch. And so then there's the river piece, and the low forecast is the primary driver in this challenge that we've got going on access. Those 2018-19 we're right there in that 40 to 36,000 fish. That was what we saw then, and so we're right in the same ballpark. And so the ocean has been. I was there at March Council. Summer Chinook was a big deal there. And so they're working around trying to shape that up. And so really what we're trying to do is make sure we don't exceed our recreational allocation in season to set us up for maybe an opportunity at something or not impacting sockeye or steelhead. That's kind of what we're hoping to get through today on that. So we don't anticipate any harvest opportunity. We'll have to wait until on summer Chinook for retention until we'd have to wait and see what the run size says. And if it says it's double, that changes the landscape. But we have to wait until then. So we're really talking about that June 16th through the end of June is kind of the area of concern. The rest of July is if the run comes in close to forecast still. So along with releasing all adult Chinook, there is a consideration of the no hatchery jack retention. We did that in 18 and 19 just to find another way to reduce adult handle in season. That's just another option to help us along the way. Mention the run size update timing. If run size allows for it and our handle's been something contained and controlled in season, maybe we'll be fortunate to have some balance to work with. That's kind of we're trying to avoid exceeding the recreational allocation because that can jeopardize other fisheries like the steelhead sockeye fishery. On the sockeye front, we've had a couple of closures recently, including last year, even with the record run. That was hitting the recreational allocation. So we've given increased catch rates and all that recently and trying to avoid closures. And again, there's a recreational allocation there. We shared with the advisors a couple of different concept approaches, reduce the bag limit, maybe delay start, block openers. The support there was largely around a reduced limit. However, that June 16th to the 20th is a high cost on sockeye catch. I mean, it's good fishing. They're there. That's when they're there. I mean, they're there after that too. But when we did a little modeling based on recent catch rates, in order to stay within the recreational allocation, we came up with a one sockeye limit as opposed to two. Still one steelhead in the bag. But a June 23rd to the end of July is what we could afford. So we would have to delay the start, or if you wanted that, and that's a Monday, if you wanted to bump it up and include that weekend, so the 21st, that would only get you to June 30th, which puts you right in there on the edge of that in-season run size update, which would be about June 30th. So it kind of almost sets you up, but it's kind of tight. So those are questions we want to get your input on later on when we come back to that. And obviously in-season run size updates and where our rec balance remains, we would obviously consider an increased bag limit or additional time, depending on which concept approach we take. That's the summer season. And now we're into fall.
Yeah, I'll pick it up here. Thanks, Ryan. Like like Ryan said, we want to hear some thought and discussion around summer season fisheries, specifically that sockeye thing. But we expect most of the conversation here this afternoon will be specific to fall main stem fisheries. So just going to go through this pretty high level, lay out give the lay of the land here to set us up for some good conversations and discussions back and forth here this afternoon. So, our goals are to provide some Chinook retention opportunity in all areas of the river. And yes, I'm well aware there's more than 200 miles. I undercut that a little bit. It was just ad-libbing. So, but the point is, there's a lot of area open for these recreational fisheries, and we have to balance across the board on all of these. And as we already talked about, there's shifts in stock composition as you move, upriver and throughout time as well. Yeah, so we're anticipating what's become our standard daily bag limits, 2 fish, but only 1 Chinook. 1 Chinook retention is allowed. All of the concepts that we modeled and provided here in the meeting materials incorporated similar impact sharing between fisheries of both the LRH and SRW harvest rates. And we've got some concepts in there that have some ideas to slow accrual of LRH, especially in the lower river fisheries where those are more predominant. Allow for in-season fishery assessment, as we always do. And the other thing is we've had to incorporate the recent trend that we've seen on higher than average Chinook handle rates. Fisheries are changing, they're dynamic. Fisheries are becoming more effective at targeting and catching fish. And also people are expanding into new areas too that haven't necessarily been as popular in the past. So, effort and effectiveness of the fisheries are changing. We're trying to build some of that into our model projections here too, to get at that season stability goal. The other piece is we try to align Chinook retention as much as possible. It's very difficult to do given the broad geographic scope and the times we're talking about here. But in general, we're trying to get like the Bowie Tan and Puget Warrior fisheries relatively aligned in Chinook retention dates, and then the Warrior to Bonneville and above Bonneville fisheries as well to try to provide overlap there to alleviate or at least reduce some effort shift. As we already talked about, we do need to make sure there are some Chinook mortalities available for coho target fisheries or other time frames when Chinook retention is closed. Still keep some opportunity open. And then, as Brian mentioned, based on our feedback that we get here today, discussions we've had, feedback that we get through the online portal as well, we'll coalesce around one fishery management strategy per area that we take to April Council and use that into our modeling of our full suite of fisheries. We already talked about the northern fishery abundances that aren't available yet. Those will be coming. And yeah, standard in-season kind of goals here. We try to reduce the risk of in-season closures. In this business, there's no way to alleviate risk, but you can try to manage risk. That's what we do. We also have a priority to manage these fisheries in season. So we're continually, virtually real time updating catch and effort estimates and stock composition estimates as well. Have a good sense of what's happened to date, what's happening currently, and what is expected to happen in the future. So you look forward in time to manage the fisheries. We do understand effort shift issues and likelihood of that. And so we need to build some of that into the concepts as they relate with each other. And we've already, stepped through all the policy guidance objectives that we have to stay within bounds on as well. And you know, overall, it's really difficult, but trying to limit complexity and regulations is a goal. Page 14 is the summary table of the different concepts for the main stem Chinook retention fisheries, coho retention fisheries, and our expectation for steelhead retention as well. We'll get into the details of this during the discussion. Just wanted to frame this up. Two concepts for the fisheries stream of Bonneville. There's just one that we've modeled out here for the Warrior to Bonneville fishery. There's two included here for the West Puget to Warrior fishery. The second one there is last year's approach with that week of mark select in there. We threw that in as a comparison. So people could see what that would look like compared to just running straight on mark in that one. That was a preferred option that came out of the public last year. I'm not sure that we had the same support for that one this year, but want to give everyone the chance to weigh in on that. You know, as everyone's well aware, buoy 10 fishery has been the most challenging to manage over the last several years here. We've got 4 different concepts that we've thrown out here for the purposes of discussion. The first one is essentially last year's season structure that rolled into this year. That's kind of what that would look like. We've got 2 non-mark only concepts in here. One, a split season with some non-mark opportunity on the front end, and then in the back end, late August and moving into September. The third one is non-mark only if it's at the end of August and over the Labor Day weekend and into September. And then the fourth is kind of a blend with a little bit of mark select time starting in mid-August, and then primarily non-mark select opportunity at the end of August into early September weekend as well. And that's kind of what we have laid out in the text on pages 15, 16, and beyond here. A little more detail on that, but I wanted to kind of lay out, you know, or frame it in the sense of concepts rather than getting necessarily hung up on the dates. The dates and everything and in there are just so you have something to compare, right? But those specific dates will, you know, are likely to change somewhat as we shape our final fishery options. So just a little more detail. We've got Bonneville fishery. That's the fishery that has really been growing the fastest. Average Chinook catches over the last 3 years have been over 14,000, which is a fair bit higher than that fishery has had prior to that. So some of that is effort shift, some of that is people learning new areas, some of that is different techniques that are able to focus in on herbs a little more in the main stem as well. So a whole suite of things that are changing in that fishery, but it's growing for sure. So we've got 2 concepts there. One is basically start Chinook retention August 1 and run it as far as you can. The point to remember here is that this fishery is an herb heavy fishery, especially during that earlier time frame. So the second concept is just floated out there for discussion and basically a way to get into a time frame where there's more of those pool upriver break stocks. So not one of our limiting stocks, but that would require delaying Chinook retention until early September, and then you know, so losing a fair chunk of time in August, starting it later, and you know, there's pros and cons to that, but that's kind of what it would take to reduce some of the herb harvest there and extend that from a preseason standpoint out a little further on paper. I already talked through the 2 general concepts for the West Puget to Warrior fishery and also the one that we have in here for Warrior to Bonneville. Fairly straightforward there. And I think I'm not going to run through all the detail here on the buoy 10 piece. This is going to be a big part of our discussion here, I think, as well. But, just want to say, we definitely understand the desire for consistency in those fisheries and the regulations there. I would like to point out that the last 2 years, we have achieved the preseason plan for the fisheries. That's important. Whether the plan is ideal or not, that's a different question. But the point is, and I hope people do recognize that what we had on paper at the end of April is what actually occurred in the fishery those 2 years, plus some. There was significant in-season additions as well. So, so that is a positive. That is our goal here. We're still working on this fishery. We're still working with you all to get this fishery dialed in. There's significant challenges around this fishery. Big one is that thermal block that can form up at the end of August. That changes the dynamics of that fishery dramatically. There's no real middle ground on that. You're either fine without a, and follow some of our preseason modeling without a thermal block, but if that thing sets in like it did in 22, all of our preseason assumptions can go off the rails, right? And it changes everything very quickly. And that fishery's big and it moves fast. Just to put it in context, peak day, we can see 5,000 angler trips handling 3,000 to 4,000 Chinook in a day. I mean, that's like a whole week in the ocean fishery off the mountain from there, right? So very different situation. You guys know that, but it's important to point out. So, we've used a variety of regulations to try to get that fishery, into a place of more stability. I don't think we're there yet. That's what we're here to talk about and discuss through and continue to work through that. I think I'll leave it there. I don't want to get into too much of the concept text here. You guys can all read that and see it and understand it. So just to wrap up, page 18, we've got, this has been fairly standard for the last several years, a summary of steelhead regulations across the board, both the main stem and various tributaries, including those thermal angling sanctuaries that Oregon has in rule off the mouth of some of those Zone 6 tributaries. We won't run through all this, very similar, well, identical to last year's expectations and very similar to what's been in place for several years here. So the details all there. Along page 19, other expectations, continuation of the barbless hook regulation, party fishing rule that expected to have an effect for all fall fisheries again this year, as we have done fairly standard over the past decade plus. And then the other big one, it's kind of hidden in here a little bit, but is that Warrior Lewis line modification. So nice big map here that, anyone who fishes that area, understands that there's been some difficulties around that dogleg boundary line there. Enforcement has definitely had some problems with being able to enforce that line, and anglers have a hard time tracking that line too. It's not set up for success, I guess, is one way to put it. So, we've heard that from the public. We've heard it from enforcement as well. So during the last recreational advisory group meeting, we threw this idea out there, and several advisors jumped on board with trying to suss out a better line for that. Developed a proposal here that we wanted to put out in front of the public that straightens that line back out to where it was in 07, I think, when we first implemented that line. It was straight. It wasn't dog-legged until 2011, I think. No one really knows why that change was made, or at least no one's told me they think it was made, but it was. So anyway, I really appreciate the engagement with multiple advisors and other agency staff and enforcement staff on both sides of the river that jumped into this and very quickly came up with several alternatives and came to a solution that should work for everybody, but we want to get some input from folks here on what you think about it. Essentially, it's a straight line from Warrior Rock Lighthouse straight across to that dolphin off the lower end of Bachelor there. Easy peasy, should be, right? So hopefully that's kind of a win-win and something positive that we've been able to move on here. So that's there for discussion, and then Ryan's gonna.
Yeah, it's got a little bit
to the
ministries. So we got a little bit left. You know, it's just a reminder, we come up with one concept for strategy per area and model accordingly. You know, the April council will reflect the updated northern fishery abundance and harvest estimates. Herb and SRWs are most limiting, constraining. Even when you compare it to last year, the herb run is about where last year's final run was. The LRH Lower River Tules is a bit higher. So we're actually a bit, when you compare globally from last year to this year, we're actually more constrained, primarily constrained by the upriver bright SRW, just because the Lower River Tules bumped up quite a bit more.
Can I say one thing? Can we get the statements on the Reach and Snake River on those stocks real quick? Did escapement goals get met?
Yeah, everything got
That's
met.
gonna help on modeling real quick.
Yeah, everything last year achieved. Yeah, I think the only thing that we flagged that wasn't achieved was from a postseason assessment from in-season, the upriver bright SRW went over, but everything else that we are aware of hit their mark.
You were close.
Yeah. Yeah, so obviously the links in there for comments. We're gonna have a discussion here for more. We're still managing to reduce risk in season closure. We have to take into account stock comp shifts in season, consider effort shift. You know, we don't want to add more regulations than necessary. And we have to achieve our policy guidance objectives if we have, and that is a laundry list of things we will have to consider if we move from adjust the dates and from the concepts we select. And then obviously certain then there's in-season management. So we use a preseason plan to kind of set us up, and then we manage in season and adjust from there. With that, we have one last little quick walkthrough in the Region 5 tributary. Walk through that real quick, and then we'll have a discussion on everything and questions.
You want to move the mic down, or
you take
good? With Scott's gonna walk us through this, and then we can move through, and then I think Shannon, I think we're gonna share screen if that's okay. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure that's showing. It's not showing up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true down there.
Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, Jeff, Ryan. Hostel Hollow District 10 Fish Bio for WDFW. Here to speak to the Region 5 tributary salmon and steelhead proposals. And we have one last piece after we get to our non-trips. So our fall Chinook and Cove seasons, daily limits. These tributaries will be opened under permanent pamphlet rules. We don't see any season or daily limit changes proposed for the 8 major trips in the Lower Columbia or Drano or Forget. Those rules are all in the handout if you wanted more reference there. We have a proposed weir that's going to be installed on Lower Germany Creek this year as a PFAS control method for fall Chinook. And there will be posted closed water signs around this weir. Typically, Region 5 posts closed water signs around these weirs because that's where fish can aggregate and just kind of leads to poor behaviors. This year, for this weir, we're going to propose 200 feet above and 200 feet below while the weir is installed. For the Kalama, we have a rule clarification. Currently, the rule is defined as 1,000 feet below the fishway entrance at Kalama Falls Hatchery. When that rule was first implemented way back in the day, there was some measuring errors, either hip chain or it looked like 1,000 feet or something like that. Recently, our constituents have noted that there's a distance discrepancy with where the signs are posted and the verbiage in the book. So the signs are not going to be moved. The clarification is to redefine the landmark to posted markers at approximately 1,400 feet below the fishway entrance. And that's there's a large deep hole that fish can stack up into just below the hatchery, and it's just going to help those fish and help enforcement too, because people will point on their maps in their phones that, oh, I'm over 1,000 feet, but in reality, they're upstream of those markers. Our Bonneville Pool tributaries, our steelhead conservation strategies are going to continue. Jeff alluded to these already for wind, Drano, white salmon, and klickitat on the Washington side, with some July through October closures and night closures for salmon and steelhead also to help with enforcement. And then, so there's one last thing that we want to talk about. It's Drano Lake, and we're seeking input on this. It's just a concept right now. Can't emphasize that enough, that what we're trying to do is seek input from the public, ideas, and how do you feel about this, so that we can kind of implement that into future possible rules. So just to kind of orient you spatially, on the left here is aerial view of Drano Lake as a whole. And then the right image is of the area that we want to discuss. And it's not shown in this picture yet, but this includes the bank fishing only area, or boat exclusion. Depends on how you fish. You'll call it different things. So the current boundary line extends, well, it's in effect from April 16th to June 30th. And it extends from the cove on the northern shore there to the easternmost boundary, or piling on the bridge, on the railroad bridge. And this was established in the early 2010s to kind of separate the masses and kind of resolve some boat and bank angler conflicts. It was widely supported at the time, and things were good for a while. So some current issues, as people know, there's extreme levels of effort in this area. There's a lot of boats that want to fish a really small geographic area, and a lot of those larger vessels complain about getting pushed across the boundary line. And so as a result, there's of these, increasing incursions across that line, is that enforcement gets called more. There's a lot of boundary line and enforcement warnings are given, and then citations issued. And then unfortunately, we probably saw a lot of the YouTube videos in the past year of fights on the bank. And it's not the good old fashioned fun anymore, right? When people are really getting hurt and.
Was that a fight? Was that between a banking and a boat, or was that two boats?
Both.
That was
I think there's been
You pick
a
it
serious.
multiple times.
Well, there was one that all over YouTube all the time that you saw.
Listen to Rick Sham, he literally.
Yeah,
took the
so it's
report.
been everything. So it's been boats getting engaged with each other. It's been bank fishermen engaged with boat fishermen. And then it's been assaults both ways, people hucking objects both ways. A young girl was hit with a piece of lead a couple years ago from somebody hucking it from the bank on a fishing line. It's unacceptable. So, yeah.
So there's a problem area. It's a really small sandbox and a lot of people on them. So what we are seeking is public input on some scenarios. And, one scenario is to keep it as it is, obviously. We want to, we want to develop future management options for Reno. We're not proposing new rules. We want to help make it simpler for people. We don't want to make it more complicated. We don't want additional regulations. So what we would like to encourage people to do is to submit comment through the North of Falcon portal and also through the Region 5, the Team Ridgefield website. So these concepts here, if we were to look at the top image, incorporates the easternmost footing of that bridge, but it extends the northern edge about 50 yards. And that kind of makes that bank area a little bit bigger. It kind of makes it big enough that people can't cast quite as far, so that there should be fewer interactions with bank and boats there. And then the lower image there incorporates another idea. The northernmost point would be similar, but the southernmost would actually be somewhere on the point of shore rather than on the bridge pilot. So those are just a couple of ideas. If you have more ideas, please submit. The North of Falcon portal is only open for another few days, but we'll take more over time through the regional
Team Ridgefield.
Thank you, Team Ridgefield. And some other strategies that we're thinking about is social media campaign, pick your platform, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, whatever. But we'll also be incorporating our boundary marker that we deployed last year. It demonstrated that there was some effectiveness in helping people stay within the rules and kind of improving compliance.
Can I jump in on that one? So we haven't deployed the marker. We would consider deploying it if it continues to become a challenge again this year. I know a lot of people don't like that marker. We hope generally now, starting soon.
What's the department's goal on that fishery?
In terms
To
of
curtail enforcement issues or to help the recreational angler get along with each other? What's your goal?
I think
I'm just gonna tell you, that goal on that is gonna create either extreme angst and more issues of image problems for the department, or the bank angler is gonna be like, you didn't change anything, screw you guys. It's just, you have a lose-lose ahead of you. Or do you want to take a more conservative approach, and you should actually interact with boats and bank anglers and enforcement all together rather than changing
these type of deadline issues, which are going to create real issues.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that from an angler that's on the water every day. I refuse to go to that location because of all of the embarrassment that literally it's embarrassing. And it's really hard to deal with as a, somebody who doesn't want to be looked upon as an embarrassment. That's embarrassing. So I don't know what your solution is, but that seems.
So again, I think I really appreciate the feedback. I think right now, we're just looking for some thoughts or ideas on boundary line adjustments and or other concepts people might have. So we're looking for some feedback, and then we're going to be working to shape what potential future options might look like. I think our primary focus and responsibility is to provide for an orderly fishery. And then within that, we want to try to provide as much opportunity to as many different types of user groups as we can. And so, the challenge with this one is it's borderline becoming disorderly. And so we don't want to have to limit the fishery, but we're looking for tools and options. So, yeah.
As far as the Drano Lake fishery in the spring, I worked with Cindy LaFleur quite a bit back in the day on that fishery. And there was a proposal on that boundary line, and I helped with that along with the bank angling that they were running the dang lines all the way up to the Columbia a while back. When we were looking at that line, if they expanded it for the boats that they couldn't go past and the bank anglers, what's stopping the bank anglers from just basically taking up that area that we just moved that line down? So, right now they're all stuck on, I guess you'd call it the west end there. And then if we move that boundary line up a ways, aren't they just going to work the banks, closer? And aren't we still really running into that same problem? Aren't they casting, those wiggle warts or whatever now at a 45 into that same area?
It could be. So that's why, again, we're looking for different orientations.
So that was the issue we had at the time. And I always said, hey, look, that fishery belongs to all recreational anglers, not just bank, not just boat. We need to learn how to get along. I mean, at this point, we've lost a lot of fisheries in the spring, and I think that's why we're seeing an increased effort in that fishery. Consider maybe managing the effort, somehow, rather than coming up with all these different boundary lines and rules. I just think that it's probably going to end up being counterproductive.
Appreciate the feedback. Again, I think the boundary line adjustments are one potential option. We're looking for some feedback on. There are other time management regulations that we could look at too. So we're, again, haven't formulated a proposal yet. We're just trying to get some initial feedback and want to provide opportunity on that early. So looking forward to, comment.
We do canoes only. No.
Write that down. No fishing with my buddies.
And I know Ryan probably wants to move us. I think the last slide we had was just showing where you could comment. I think we already covered that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No.
Should be good.
Yeah. Thank you for that, host Wah and Bryce on walking through the regional materials. So we have on the screen the fall season concepts, but so I want to highlight, we're looking for input on that. We're looking input on, there's a little bit of summer ship question, just, if there's anything there, but really focused around the sockeye during the summer season. And then obviously, we're still open to regional tributary thoughts as well, additional thoughts for Matt, Bryce, and host Wah. And then, obviously we have the steelhead restrictions and coho opportunity as well. So there's a lot out there. We're just going to keep that table up there just for ease. But I'm looking to take names and work through the list, and we will stop at 2 p.m. at the latest. So if we get done before that, that's fine. But we tried to create as much space for a conversation. So I'm just going to see names, hands. Start raising them. So I have Francis listed, and go ahead and raise any hands. So David. Yeah. Les, David, Bill, Virtually too, feel free to raise your hand, come off mute, state your name if you can't raise your hand. Okay, we'll get started with that then. So I'll just go in the order I have on my list. Francis, you're up first. You can come off mute. Francis, go ahead. You can come off mute. Star 6. Come off mute. All right, we'll come back to you, Francis. Maybe he's out there hooked up on a Springer. Les?
Just had a couple of questions and alternative proposals, or which one that I think we would have want. So can somebody remind me of how mortalities are counted and what is it, 10%? Get into this.
What species?
Chinook, I'm sorry, or Chinook and sockeye for this.
Yeah, so the quick answer on that is, so obviously we have harvest, so catch. And then, so I'm talking total mortalities, and then there's the release mortality component. And so in the summer season, it's a 15% release mortality rate on sockeye and summer Chinook. In the fall season, we're using the barbless, so it's 19% on Chinook and coho. And so we apply that to the release estimate that we get from our Creole dockside sampling.
Your barbless is higher than your, no, we got 1% or 2% in barbless.
If barbs were implemented, it'd be 21% in the fall.
Yep.
It's 19% for fall Chinook and coho. And steelhead year round is 10%.
I want to get that out a little more, just to figure out why those percentages, how'd you come up with those percentages, but I'll take your word for it. And just briefly, I think for the above Bonneville concept, I talked to Jeff just a little bit offline, is that I vetted a few people once this was released and published, and the general consensus is that the people in my fishery would like to see the concept 1 adopted. The theory is that, you know, that fishery, the first part of August can actually be pretty good, and the pressure is still not super bad. Most folks are still, or I should say, a lot of folks are still fishing below Bonneville. And then again, hoping that the pre-forecast and stuff come true, is that maybe we can get that September 16th through October extended like we did last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's actually all I had.
Okay.
Who was next?
Thanks, Les. David, I think you were next. Yep. While David's getting the mic, I'll jump to Francis quick since you came off mute. David will be.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so exception in and out here. I'm sitting unplugged at the top of White Island. But I want to start with opportunity, meaningful opportunity. As a sport fisherman, opportunity starts with a bite. Okay? If we can't even get an opportunity to get a bite, it's over. You know, time and area is what we need to get. And I will just go back to the options you guys have laid out for buoy 10. 3 of those just take away huge swaths of time. And in fact, as well, you don't have the time, you can't fish in that zone. There's 2 problems with that. You take away the time, but trying to fish in that zone is losing opportunity. And the only way for it is to shift elsewhere. It's easier to get a bite. So of the 4 that you've got, I would conceptually throw my support behind option 1. It gives the most time area of the options you've got. But I would say that's probably a starting point. Is how we haven't used the LRH that's been available to buoy 10. I mean, if there's a way to tweak dates, I heard Ryan say earlier, you know, the dates aren't set in stone, but conceptually, I like number one. So I'll throw my support behind number one with a caveat that is a starting point. We'll get a few more in there, not select for buoy 10. We take them. I also heard a comment about Warrior to Bonneville. Okay, this is a reach of the river that at one time was affectionately known as the dead zone because no fish were caught there, very few. We hadn't figured out how to do it, but the code has been unlocked. The super flash, super bait, spinners have unlocked the code, and now that is a high exploitation reach of the river. And I'm not understanding how, if we're worried about SR.
All right, so I think Francis just lost his signal and dropped off, unfortunately, but I got the gist of that buoy 10 at least. Not quite sure where the next section was going, but.
Yeah, didn't catch his thoughts on.
But I'm sure he'll come back online. I'm sure we'll get more.
He'll make sure.
Yeah. All right, David, go ahead.
Thank you. So of the constraining ESA stocks that we impact, how often are they assessed and are they getting any better? Is the first question. And then before you answer that, I would just say the Puget Island to Lewis, Warrior Rock, I would go with option 2, and buoy 10, I kind of favor option 2 as well.
Okay, and on so thank you for your thoughts there on the concepts. You know, got a few staff in the room. I think part of it is when we have our authorization covered, like USV Oregon, for example, that's a 10-year management agreement. When we're working, you know, have another one, NIMS does an assessment of the fishery proposals, basically, as a way to think about it. So they're assessing, you know, is there jeopardy to endangered stock or threatened stock that's ESA listed? Charlene or any other staff want to add anything else to that?
In addition to that, NIMS typically has a pattern of 5-year reviews for all the listed stocks that they'll go through on different schedules. I don't recall off the top of my head when the most recent ones were done. 22 for fall, Snake River Falls. Okay. Yeah, so just a couple of years ago, there was a robust 5-year review done for both status and listing, criteria around that. Those are all available on, well, who knows now, but typically those are available on NOAA's websites. Can't guarantee that any longer.
Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna move down my list. David, I think Bill, you're up. Either broadcast or sit down there.
I don't.
You broadcast it then.
Okay, you guys can hear me? Yeah. We use the mic. All right, well, I think I asked you, we use the mic, please?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think we all kind of, I think I asked you first and foremost, a big picture of this is gonna be Hanford Reach. What's their numbers, what's SRWs looking like? Last year we had the same forecast and more came back. So your in-season management tool really worked last year. Doc, Francis, I'll call him, kind of hit what we were saying. Your buoy 10, like summaries that we've started to, when we switched over to MSF, it's working, but I kind of have a feeling it's working too well. Okay, we need to get buoy 10 back to kind of where it was. And that is, a full-fledged fishery, right? Are we ever gonna do that? I don't know. But waiting these long periods, and getting into a before we get to a non-mark select, segment, that's difficult. And Jim is gonna attest to the same thing. It is causing people to leave. Okay? And then you come up with the same assumption, well, this is why zone 6 is really taking off, is because it's causing people to leave down low. And they are gonna move to where they can just keep fish. That's how it is. It sucks to actually, say that this is happening down in that story, but it is, it's happening. And, we get caught in the middle between, I'm getting caught in the middle because I support Zone 6 last year at the cost of what looked like Astoria giving up Astoria fish, and that wasn't the case. It's a really hard pill to swallow. But if we have to, I support number 1 for sure on Bleeding. I'd like to see the option 1 maybe move down to like the 24th or 25th for MSF, and then go maybe if it can afford. If in-season management could come into play that early, probably not, but that's probably a big ask for you guys. But if 824, 825 can go for hatchery only and then continue on, that's what it's all about. Just keep people in the area is a little bit more important to me than anything else right now. West Puget to Warrior, that number 2, like Dave was saying, that's pretty legit. I'm not gonna give a decision on whether number 1 or 2 for zone 6. I don't know what to say on that. Making them wait till 9/5 is another hard pill to swallow. That might be a whole big thing for, what's happening this year when people leave one area to go to another. That time frame looks like it has something going on there. On the Warrior deadline, I think that's a real simple gig right there. I think it's great. That Drano thing actually has me highly concerned. I don't know to tell you, it's not going to look good either way, but I did make it a real point that is an absolute travesty what's happening there. So I don't know if you shut that down, it's even more of a travesty. The tribes, they have a lot of work to do there. Just the whole big picture, I have no idea what to do. Be careful. If you make these changes, you're going to be really kind of not nicely talked about by a certain boat or crew or whatever. Not that you need to care, but they all buy licenses. So does a bank fisher. They all buy licenses. So that's hard. Or you're going to make a really lot more work for enforcement. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but maybe, like I was saying, going and like being proactive instead of this enforcement thing, talking to the people about how they need to behave. I don't know. Some sort of a solution might be a better move. I don't know. Something to think about.
You pass it to Jim there. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
We're just chatting here.
So you mentioned sort of, for option 1, sort of dialing it back on the mark selective a day, and then maybe you can consider more time non-mark. But I kind of feel like, and staff can correct me here, but like, isn't that what option 4 really is? You have to give up a lot of early August time to be able to do that concept you said to make it continuous in the latter half.
Well, the thing is though, an overall opportunity, which we're looking at.
Well, I get that,
You're
but
right.
I mean,
You're
your
saying-
question to staff was, well, what does it look like if we dial it back to the 25th? And that's the answer.
Well, and that's where I kind of, okay, I understand that's the answer.
Yeah.
But what I'm telling you is that we, as a collective, maybe even not just we in the room, but the fishing public has seen the effort shift to go to mark select in buoy 10. It's working too well. We may need to dial that back because right now you guys are making that work. It has flat out worked, right? And then again, like you said, Jeff, it's worked too well. Then again, so we have to adjust here, there, but yet we've got an option which are identical to last year's solutions. So with a little bit improved forecast, maybe not on SRW, so I get it. But SRWs came in way over the board, LRH came in way over the board, ERB came in over the board last year, right? So I'm not saying you need to change your whole dynamic of policies, but this is difficult. So maybe if we go down to like 24th, it can still fit in parameters, but it would probably, and like I said, it might be a little bit too late to be able to even, or too early in the run to be able to adjust that accordingly. But if there was some way to adjust some sort of dynamic in the middle of that run, and a story about it, you guys see by the 24th, we have a certain room, oh, we can afford it. It probably is a pipe dream, but right now, a hatchery only Astoria become tough. So I don't know what to.
Going from option 1 to option 4, you're losing 10 days of fishing.
You're losing a
To get
huge amount of opportunity,
Yeah.
which is, you know.
It's 4 days of mark select is 1 day of non-mark in the meet.
That's the way you've computed it. We have figured out that's the computation, right?
Yeah,
But is that
using
number
real data.
adjustable? Like,
Well,
you're
yeah, we
computing
would have to
4 days
implement,
long.
we'd have to implement in-season management, just like we do for spring Chinook or whatever. Gather the catch,
At that
read
point,
all the tags, apply the tags to the catch. This is where we're at. This is our target. And then we would meter those out, obviously carefully. I mean, that's an approach for sure, but it's very expensive fishing, non-mark selective, 0.4 ER per day.
Yep.
In the meat of things for LRH. And I mean, times that by 10, you're looking at 4%, buoy 10. By the time you kind of get these general seasons here, you're looking at about 4.25 is what you got for buoy 10, 4.25. And that's leaving enough for those areas above West Puget Island, up to Bonneville, to have those seasons that you see there, because they need, about 1.3 to 1.6% ER per area to prosecute those fisheries there, because they do have some LRH encounters. Obviously less as those fish turn off into their natal trips, but it's very expensive. So you got to keep that in mind as far as what the currency is and the cost. It's what you're seeing here is reflective of that cost.
Yeah, but last year, Quentin, we didn't need it after the meat of it was done. We didn't need such stringent guidelines, did we?
So just
You're
remember,
looking in hindsight,
Yeah.
right? When we had all of the tags, we had all of the catches.
yeah, if we
So-
knew that there was not going to be a thermal block this fall,
Which we don't.
we could
Right.
lower the cost.
Yeah.
That's the
Right.
question. So I've got a speaking, are you good for now? Okay. I'm gonna move us, I've got some additional names on the list. I've got, so Jim Bridwell's next, and then I think I had Jim Fowler after that, then Robert. I've got Jesse.
All of this has thermal.
So,
Yeah.
I've got Robert, Kraft,
Is he still?
Greg King,
Probably does.
Harry. Okay, caught up now. So Jim Bridwell, you're up.
Okay, I don't like fishing mark select, never have.
Jim Fowler, go.
This is equivalent to that.
The mic takes, all right. It's very sensitive.
We're killing it, sorry.
No worries. Sorry. Go.
So having said all that, over the years, buoy 10 is kind of the dog that wags the tail. And you can't sit there and put the rest of the river at risk at buoy 10. I really like fishing buoy 10, and I like catching a big upriver bright, keeping it and not and all that stuff. But you gotta be real careful, because what we did 2 years ago isn't the right thing to do. And I fish down there, so I like fishing down there. I've got to slip in there, walk, and I do all that stuff. But it's not right to shut down or impact the rest of the river to give buoy 10 a full, wide open season. So I would favor option 1 if you want the most days. My second choice would be option 4. I do like the idea if there's not a thermal block of extending that opportunity as far as it can go. There's going to be caught. As far as West Puget Island to Lewis River, I would go with option one. Got a lot of pushback on the Mark Select last year in that area. You know, honestly don't know enough about the bridge, so I'd support what Russ is saying there. The sockeye, I would support 621. I thought the boundary line you guys came up with, the Warrior Rock, was a great solution, so whoever did that, good job. But that's my.
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful. All right. So we have to move the mic all the way down. I think it's Jim there at the end is next.
I think you guys did a really good job last year. So.
Thank you.
Okay, Jim Fowler, you guys probably know I run the bait shop at Hammond and fish buoy 10 quite a bit, live down there. We would be in favor of option one of the 4 options, and I want to make clear, I don't want to shut the river down for anyone else. I used to live in Portland, Washougal. I have fished every fishery in the river from the ocean to McNary. And I understand the value of every one of them. I fished Bonneville, I fished Cascade Locks long before people did it. So I get it. Couple things I kind of want to point out. Part of the reason people at Buoy 10 are freaking out, I've got the Hammond Marina financial stuff here for 2022 to 2024. Camping at Hammond in 2022 was $74,000 worth of revenue. In 2023, with the block closures, that drops to $43,000 in revenue. Then last year, with the same model we're working with that looks like better season, it only went up to 50,000. And so I'm famous for questioning your catch and effort numbers. And this is why, because a lot of what you're doing is matrix numbers and, you know, kind of grabbing little bits of data here and trying to extrapolate them. This is dollars in the bank. I mean, that's a municipality. And my business reflects this kind of downturn. I mean, 73,000 to 50,000, that's a third. And I've got businesses and civic leaders coming to me saying, where is everybody? Labor Day weekend last year, I had people coming to my shop to buy bait. There's no line at the bait ramp at Hammond on Labor Day weekend. And they're asking, is it open? Did they close it again? I said, no, it's open. You can kill any Chinook. And they go, well, why is nobody here? So that's, you know, that's part of what we're doing. I've been doing this a long time. I just want to observe in 2024, we ran the same Model 1 type season and we killed 18,654 catch Chinook, according to the numbers. That was with an ocean that closed early on like August 11th, I believe. So you had everyone trapped in the river and they only managed to kill 18,654 Chinook. We're modeling the same season this year for 2025 and expecting to kill 31,700. And conceivably with more coho in the ocean, the days that it's marked select, you're going to have most of the fleet crossing the bar. You would think that would level out. We wouldn't have that Chinook kill, right? I just don't see how on basically the same season structure, we're going to kill 13,000 more fish. That's, you know, but I don't necessarily advocate. I understand what Quentin's saying. As we start walking back and making that, if the whole block of any Chinook is all around Labor Day, I understand that gets costly. I'm wondering, we only used we left 10% of our 41% lower river ER on the table last year. In river was only like 6.3%. Is there a way to mix in some any Chinook days early when it's primarily tulies, not upriver fish? And we're fishing that more mixed stock of lower river fish. Can we access some of those? And maybe that alleviates some of the pressure off the upriver fish that are rapidly becoming a constraining stock. That, you know, I want to spread this out so that
we utilize, because in the past, we used to beg for like, oh, can we get to 41% ER instead of 38? And in river, if we had 10% instead of 7 or something, it would open up all this opportunity. Well, now we're just leaving that on the table. And I understand we don't want to close the whole river down, but are there small tweaks we can make to access those lower river fish and ease some of the pressure on the upper river fish? That's my goal. I don't want you to put other fisheries at jeopardy. That's what we want to see if it's possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, that concept too is kind of getting at your last point there with non-mark select on the front end, where it's predominantly truly heavy, and then then another week or so of non-mark at the end of the month when rights are starting. So that's one way to get at.
But it's just yeah, you go from like 37 days of open fishing to 24, and
those are the trade-offs. Yeah, yeah, that's what we're talking about here. Yeah.
And part of what's driving that, correct me if I'm wrong, Quentin, part of what's driving the catch expectation is we have that big bump up in the Thule forecast as compared to last year. The Brights are comparable to last year's run size, pre and post. It's the Thule piece and mark selective, they're higher clip rates. That's part of what's driving that higher number compared to what we saw in the mark selective fishery last year. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, you're good. And there's 6 more days of non-mark compared to last year in that C1. So that should bring up that's where we're gonna accrue some of those LCR Thule impacts.
Well, and that's my other fear is we get to about August 27th or 28th and you go, oh, the composition looks funky, buoy 10 doesn't get any non-mark select. And then that's going to drive another stake through the heart of the fishery because people are going to go, we're done with buoy 10. We're not booking anything near Labor Day. It looks like they can pull the rug out from under us. So, we have to be, I probably shouldn't say this, but we have to be extremely careful with those tides starting about the Friday before Labor Day weekend. Yeah. It becomes the greatest tides you can fish at buoy 10. You've got daylight, high tide holdover. Fish are going to die from buoy 10 all the way to Puget Island. You put a hook in the water anywhere, know what you're doing, you're going to kill fish if they're dead.
Every January when I get my tide book, it just opens to August for those times. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Jim. Appreciate it. All right. I'm going down my list. I don't see new hands yet, but I will just keep us going. So Robert Moxley, you are up. And so Matt, can you pass the mic down? Thanks.
I want to hit on the
Ryan, this is Chris. I'd like to talk at some point if I can.
Okay, Chris, I have you on the list. Thank you.
Yeah, throw me on there.
On the Drano thing, I'm almost wanting to go on that board and just kind of give you a visual. So, if that be possible.
Take it.
Is that cool? Okay.
It'll take me a second to get there.
Perfect. So as far as the Drano thing goes, you're gonna make a new line. It's important that you're not adding real estate or just the bank anglers and taking it away from the boat anglers, right? So if you're gonna come up with another line, you have the east end here where the bank anglers go the wiggle and whatnot. The boats come up through here and the imaginary line's down. You move it here, these rocks here, and these rocks here. The bank anglers are just gonna basically set up shop on these ends and start casting right into the boats. A problem that you're gonna have to figure out how to solve. So my suggestion is paint these rocks red or something like that. And that's a no fishing zone for boats and bank anglers. They can't come in here, boats can't go in there. It's a quarantine zone. That way they can cast their damn lures as far as they want and they're not gonna hit the boats here. There's not gonna be any interaction. You're not taking away places for the boat anglers and giving it to the bank anglers. And you're not gonna create another problem where they're just thrown into the new closure zone. Does that make sense? I don't know if the red paint works, it's just an idea.
Got it written down. Thanks.
All right, and then as far as the fall fisheries, I do want to ask the buoy 10 fishery. First of all, I want to just remind everybody that we're a lot of discussion about buoy 10 going over and how they might be the problem. I get it, all right? That they add up really quick and it could be an issue. But just to remind everybody, it wasn't buoy 10 that went over last year, it was all the other fisheries. So maybe we should be focusing on them as the problem, right? Not so much buoy 10. So, keep that in mind. They went over, buoy 10 did. So as far as the models go at buoy 10, I want to know if these models are basically modeled to 100% of the assigned impacts, or are they 80%? Is there a buffer in there? Do we know?
So short version is, well, they're all comparable to each other. So they're not exactly the same. They can't be the same given different stock comp by time and area and regulation. But we are using the same Chinook handle curve for all these, which is maxed out on the, then you have to build in the rest of the packet. So upstream of buoy 10, you have to build in those components for the herb SRWs. And so, yes, we're fully utilizing the recreational share of the Upriver Bright Snake River Wild.
Okay, so we're about 100% on the models then.
Yeah.
Not really any-
Yeah, and when you get the April council, yeah. Well, the Chinook handle is covering us in buoy 10 for a thermal block.
Okay, so there's a little padding in there.
That's based on actual data that we have had in the past. It's not a made up number. 2022. Warmer, what's that?
What kind of percentage is that?
Percentage of what?
Catch, increased catch. So if we have thermal block, what happens? Does the rectangular catch exceed, 20% of what was modeled, 30%? I mean, how big of an impact is that thermal block in regards to handle and ESA impacted consumption?
It could mean from going from like a 0.2 Chinook per angler kept to almost 1. So if you have 5, what's that?
In one day.
Any day that there's a thermal block
Yeah,
down
like
there
some
in the
point
meat
on
of
the
it,
thermal block
we're
goes
talking
close,
3,000 to 4,000 fish dead that day. And then depending on what that stock is, if there's a bunch of LCR tubing tags in there, it's gonna hurt.
Yeah. And then just jumping back to your other point of the overage issue, that was an Upriver Bright SRW overage based on the final run size coming in lower than the in-season estimate, not any fisheries issue. The fisheries did what we did plan for in-season. The numbers didn't get inflated postseason. So it's just the final denominator got smaller.
But I would say that had it been post prediction, we would have been over.
We wouldn't have planned what we had.
Okay, and with the extensions. So you're saying without the extensions, we would have been well within. Nobody would have gone.
We may have hypothetically, we made.
We would have gone over just a little bit.
Hypothetically, if the final in-season runs, the final postseason run size is what we had in season, we would have been spot on.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, I digress on that one, but anyway, as far as the buoy 10 fishery goes, we definitely need to figure out how to improve that fishery, the quality of the fishery, the days on water. Obviously, you've heard from people that, we'd like to see more non-select. That's tough to do. I think someday we're gonna have to look at managing effort, not catch. I don't know how that looks or when that happens, but I still personally, from a moral standpoint, have a problem with the mark select. I mean, you look at the numbers and it says 18,000 kept, 18,000 released. And I can tell you that most anglers aren't telling the truth to the checkers when they come back. They're releasing 10 or 15 and they're saying they're releasing 5. So I feel that the number on the release Chinook buoy 10 is substantially higher. So I think that, when this was implemented, the mark select fishery, it was a quick, easy button to deal with the situation at hand because it was a dire situation. But I think going forward, long term, we need to find a better solution. And I think that's what we're doing here today. But there needs to be more done in regards to not releasing so many fish. It's just immoral. That 19%, there was never a hard study done. So I just have a problem with it. I don't understand why I can kill and release 20, 30 fish a year and be a hero. But if I poach an elk or something, I'm a bad guy, and I lose my hunting license. So it just doesn't make sense.
It's on why on the release.
Yeah.
No, I'll get it.
Anyway, so I would support a buoy 10 option 1. And I would like to see if it was possible to back up a few of those days into the bigger tides. And if we're not able to do that, if I could get a commitment from staff that we would have a compact early on, I don't know, around the 24th or 3rd, I don't know what day that is, to look at how the fishery is producing in regards to what was modeled. And if it looks like it's underperforming, then maybe we could add some days that are non-select to that fishery at that time. So maybe some in-season plays that are hopeful with that fishery. And then again, if we don't do something with it, we tend to improve the quality of that fishery. I think we're going to be looking at upriver problems in the future. It's like John Moore said years ago, it's the balloon effect. You squeeze the one end, gets bigger than the other, right? So I think that's what's taking place right now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. Appreciate that. So I have a speaking list that continues to evolve. So just so people don't think I'm missing their hands, I have Jesse up next, so just be prepared. Then Robert Kraft, then Greg King, then I have you, Francis, but I'm bumping you down a little bit just to get other people in, then I'll come back to you. So just be aware of that. After Greg, I have Harry, Chris Wynn, Kyle Hawes, Bruce Hazen, Randy Woosley. So basically everyone working through it. So Jesse, you're up. Jesse Vassar.
You got me, Ryan?
You do.
All right, thank you. Geez, so much information here, guys, and great dialogue. I appreciate it. Quentin, thank you very much for all the information that you've shared in this dialogue. It's great information, and I think goes a long way for educating everybody here. So again, thank you for that. Like everybody else is, seems like the hot topic here is kind of this buoy 10 fishery, and we heard from a number of people earlier today about the economical importance of this fishery to that area. So with that being said, I'm not a proponent to the stop and start fisheries. I think that just it kind of almost creates a derby like fishery, and people, once people come, they leave, they're not coming back. So with that being said, I would say that I would lean towards option 1. As Robert said a second ago, I think it would be great if we could set some kind of a compact up so that we could kind of in season evaluate how that fishery's performing. Maybe we don't get that thermal block. Maybe it's kind of like last year. And we're able to, maybe move that, those non-select days up a little bit, create some more opportunity there. So, I don't know, how feasible that is, but, I think that would be a great option for everybody. As opposed to the Warrior Rock, fishery, I think that's option 1 seems like a great option there. And also with that updated deadline there at Warrior Rock, I think that that proposed change would be very beneficial not only to the general public, but also law enforcement. I think it would just help, create a lot of that question and unknown there, and put people in, not put people in positions they weren't aware that they were in. So, I think that's it for now. Again, thank you everybody. This has been a great meeting, and I appreciate everybody's dialogue.
Thanks, Jesse. Robert Kraft. Oh, sorry, not Kraft. It was blocking the end of your name. I don't know why that came to my mind. Robert Kratzer.
I thought it might be me, but I was going to wait for you to come up with that.
No, my fault. Not even the Patriots.
Question for you before I have a comment was, looking to buoy 10 West Puget Island, and you look at the 4 options, picking one of those four options, how does that change the options upstream from there? Or does it?
It largely doesn't, no.
Okay,
They're basically comparable on Bright and Thule. There's gonna be a difference, but they're comparable to each other.
Okay, based on that, then I would push for option one for the Puget or for buoy 10. Just in the pure fact of, you've heard a lot of people talk, when you break the season up, you're gonna have people come, it'll be shorter, so forth. I know a tremendous amount of people that rent their houses for the entire season. People aren't gonna do that if you break the season up. Campgrounds, all that kind of stuff. So I'm not sure that works. Option one seems to be a better option for not only length of time on the water, but also for the local economies. And then I would like option two for the West Puget Island for Warrior. And I think that's it. Thank you very much. Appreciate all the work.
Yeah, thank you.
I just jump in.
Yeah,
real
go
quick.
ahead.
Yeah, really appreciate the discussion. This is what we were wanting to get back to today, is this kind of back and forth. I just want to make sure that people see under those buoy 10 concepts, only one has a split season. 3 of them do not have a break in them, right? Number 3 and number 4 start and run straight through also. Fewer days, yes, but there's no break in those either. So I just want to make sure people are seeing that.
Yeah, good point, Jeff. Thanks. All right, Greg King.
So, it's on my notes here. It seems that buoy 10 continues to lose a portion of its historical share of the paths to the upriver areas. Can you tell us that?
All the fisheries have evolved and we manage them all as a whole. So again, there are no allocations by area in these fall fisheries. We've got the ability to flex and use those as needed throughout the river.
Okay. And I think the theme here today is the economic impact on Astoria, Warrenton, Hammond, Chinook, Ilwaco, and probably Ocean Park and some of those inland places. I know people that have, 2 homes down there. Fishing guides have a home down there for the whole buoy 10 season. They like to stay down there. And they'd probably be selling their house if this continues. We always strive for August 1st to Labor Day, the non-marked selective. And now this has changed. I like option 1 like everybody else does. I like option West Puget Island to Lewis. I like option 1. And Warrior to Bonnie, I like option 1 too. I gotta agree with Jim. It's, if people don't want to go down there, if the season's broke up, guides don't want to go down there. They can go other places and fish for non-marked selective, and it's a better deal. I mean, that's just the thing. How do we fix buoy 10? Because it's a Super Bowl of salmon fisheries, and it's losing its luster over the years, and I'd like to see it return to its glory days. I mean, that used to be a hell of a good fishery, and it still can be. I mean, but it's just, I know Bill goes down there. What do you go down there for? 30 days? You fish in the ocean too?
45.
Yeah. I mean, he's got to pay rent to somebody. I mean, it's a whole mix of things, It's restaurants, hotels, bait tackle, guides. It's even the plumber down there. Somebody's house loses some plumbing, So I think we should look forward to how can we fix buoy 10, Thanks.
Thanks, Greg. We got Carrie up next. And don't forget about our summer season. We're still looking for input.
Wow.
What summer season?
Wow.
Notice, yeah, very nice, Harry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
unintended.
Yes.
Okay, I guess.
Let's go.
I somewhat reluctantly support option one. My reluctance is based on what happened 2 years ago when Bowie 10 went 100% over the catch estimate. And a lot of us don't have the opportunity to move up and down the river and chase the run and chase the seasons. So I fish mostly between Vancouver and Bonneville Dam. And 2 years ago, we just thing got shut down because Bowie 10 took double their, it wasn't an allocation, but it was double the estimate. And so we ended up with a very restricted area to fish. We could fish only from the east side, east end of Reed Island to Bonneville Dam. I think we got about 5 days of fishing because it was shut down. And so that really stung. And I guess I'm concerned about that again. So I don't know if there's any kind of a trigger that can be considered if it looks like Bowie 10's going to way over the estimate. There's a closure, but I know emergency closures are frowned upon by the department and probably by most sports. I prefer a conservative approach that assures opportunity in all sections of the road. For the boundary change at Ware Rock, I support that. Sockeye, I'm kind of ambivalent for option one or two. I guess I'd leave that up to the department. And Warrior Rock, I guess I can support option two.
Thanks. Chris Wynn, you're up next.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Well, there's a lot going on. One, I want to commend the staff. Last year, Bowie 10 had 4 days of any Chinook. Is that correct?
I think it was 5, something like that. It was small.
4 or 5. Well, and so this year the options range from 11 days all the way up to 24, because there was such outrage over all of the clipped only fishing. So I commend you for at least doing that. I hear that it's also, you want to be able to have bites. As far as economic impact goes, I mean, we've got economic impact all the way up the river. I've got friends that stay in hotels. We've got restaurants. We've got hotels. It's a big deal. And the dead zone is not dead anymore, and they catch a lot of fish. And they should catch a lot of fish. And again, I got to speak up for the Bankies. Prescott Beach and the beach at Kalama, they're a real thing for a lot of people who can't afford to get in a big old boat and fish out of Bowie 10, which frankly, a lot of people fish Bowie 10 when they can't get out into the ocean. And the ocean is going. So I hear that we want opportunity at Bowie 10, and option one provides for really a wide open season of clipped only for several days, and then 11 full days of any Chinook. I kind of like Harry's idea of having some kind of a stopgap number in there that if things are blowing out, that they can be managed in season more quickly than they were 2 years ago. I'm not going to weigh in too heavily on which of those options. To me, it looks like option one or maybe option 4 looks the best for Bowie 10. For the West Puget Island to Warrior Rock, I prefer option 1. It's 2 more days of any Chinook, and if people just got a fish, they can go upstream to above Warrior. But what I saw last year was the effort fell way off once it became March Select. And I like the proposal there of the new Warrior Rock line from the Warrior Rock Lighthouse right to the existing Dolphin there. So I think that's a good choice. So I prefer option 1 for my area here by Kalama, and thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Chris. Kyle, you are up next.
Okay. I guess I won't get into the economic loss in Astoria. We've been killing that one for a long time, but it's huge.
what I wanted to know is, what are the thermal block temperatures? We'll just say surface temps on, what do you consider a thermal block?
I mean, we all are within probably a degree or two, I'm sure,
Mhm.
but usually it's starts setting in pretty good around 72, a consistent 72. It's can break down under that, but you'll have always a little bit, and then it gets considerably worse between 72 and 74 if we get into that hot of water. So.
That happens a lot.
Right.
A lot.
Which it didn't
Even
last
mid-season.
year, right? We need some weather, you know, mid-August, early August, we need to cool down. It's already cooling down at night. Days are getting shorter, etc. So all of those things help. And yeah, if we're on like a real hot August and late into early September, that's the perfect storm for a really bad thermal barrier.
And then when obviously it gets hot, your release mortalities are gonna shoot up, right?
Yeah,
Just
essentially.
that percentage. It's
Yeah,
not gonna
we
be
use
19, it's gonna be probably in the 30s.
So from an ESA,
It's really sluggish.
for our accounting purposes, the release mortality rate is 19% in the fall period on fall ship coho.
Okay. Cause yeah, we'll catch some fish and you can tell the fish is really warm and it's like, holy cow. And then you dump them in the water and you almost got to shoot them in, get the Jesus box going. But what Robert was talking about earlier, how people report in what they've actually released. I only released 5 fish. They don't want to give the actual numbers that they released 10 or 12. I think they've got away from it now, but there's like a farce that was going around and people were saying, don't tell them the real numbers because they're just going to put it against what you catch when you turn it into the fish checkers. I think everybody's probably heard of that once or twice and they still don't tell you the right numbers. But I try to tell them that, yeah, just tell them what you released and they'll get a better mortality rate out of it and so on and so forth. And then I don't know what to say about Drano. Do draw tags on it or something. That's crazy. I don't fish down there. I don't even fish Astoria probably after the 24th. Even when I did take 2 weeks off of vacation, I don't fish down there much anymore anyways. But it gets to be a zoo from time to time. And I had a bunch of notes. They're all over the place. Sockeye in the summertime. I gotta find my notes.
It was
Here we go.
Okay, you got it.
12, yeah. Allow sockeye retention June 23rd to 31st with 2 salmonoid limit, no more than 1 sockeye and 1 steelhead. The alternative approach is to allow sockeye retention with a reduced sockeye limit. So how much more are you going to reduce 1 sockeye limit?
Yeah, that's not what that's trying to say. I think they might have bundled in. The 2 options are open the weekend on the 21st, you only get through June. Or if you wait till the Monday, then there's better likelihood of getting all the way through July.
Okay, because it says a sockeye daily limit. Sockeye daily limit is how many fish are you keeping? And that's the alternative is to reduce it.
The alternative's the date, the bag limit's the same under both of those.
Okay. Because I'm all for it too, but sockeye are 10 times better than steelhead any day of the week. They're a great tasting fish. But and if we can keep 1%, if I can get more, I hope the best, but they're great. And it's a crying shame we can't keep the summer fish. And let's see, with the thermal block in there, the summer's time had to stay a little bit later in the lower rivers because they don't want to come up, it's too warm. And same with the Willamette. They peek into the Willamette, they peek into all these tributaries all the time. So are you accounting for all those numbers with all the tributaries, Oregon and Washington?
For the summer
catch rates?
For Upper Columbia Summer Chinook, it's really just a main stem issue. So it's main stem fisheries. We do account for them in the commercial catch in the select areas, off-channel areas, but it's a main stem fishery accounting purposes until you get to the Upper Columbia above Priest Rapids, where there are some, in the past, some fisheries that fish in the tributaries. So it's main stem only.
Okay, just main stem.
Yep.
Because, yeah, we like those fish too, so, but, I don't know. As far as, buoy 10 goes, I go with number 1. And then with, I'm kind of turned between the West Puget Island, because I'd rather give people a longer time, but I hate Mark Select anyways, but obviously we have to go that route just to get us time on the water and get people in there. But I got to go with number 2. The coho retention portion of it, is there any way, excuse me, is there any way to extend that out? I mean, keep it from, not close it between, let's go with West Puget Island number 2, coho retention goes from 8/1 to 9/11, then 10/1 to 12/31. If you find that we're getting more coho in, can you close that gap down to nothing? Or open it up, I should say.
I think that would be likely an in-season decision. We're limited by the Upriver Bright, Snicker Wild, and there is a Chinook handling associated with coho fishing. There's several factors. I think we have, when we open Chinook, we open coho. But, I think in the past we have gotten coho earlier, but that would be an in-season call. I'll have to be very sensitive to that, peak passage window around that mid-September. It's a lot of Chinook handle for some coho if it doesn't play out.
We tried that a few years ago, and it was extremely unpopular because of all the Chinook handle that was occurring there. I mean, we all know there's our coho target fisheries, right? Coho are kind of opportunistic catches in that stretch. It's a Chinook target fishery.
I'd have to run into my truck, but I could tell you, we had a great coho year and I didn't catch many Chinook. And my daughter and I we got to turn in our Oregon tags still. We just bought our Washington ones the other day. And I was like, I got more fish than you did, and she killed it this year. But there was a certain date where we never even touched a Chinook. And if we did, I threw it back because I'd rather eat the coho than a Chinook any day. But it was that time frame in there. But, so anyways, I think I'm good.
Thanks, Kyle. So moving down my list, I've got, don't think his hand is up, but I had Bruce Hazen, and then I have Randy Woosley, then Francis. I'm just sorry, Francis, I'm moving you to the end so we get through everyone at least once, but you're on the list. So Bruce, go ahead, if you're still on.
Those results, right? Yeah. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank all of you guys, like many of the others have. There's been a lot of good discussion. Just real quick, the unfortunate part, actually growing up and living in Owako, the buoy 10 fishery, which is the elephant in the room, and the obvious is changed dramatically. I've lived here 40 years, charter fished, guide fished, a lot of sport fishing myself, and it's changed dramatically. I mean, for obvious reasons, the last, whatever it's been, 5 years since, the mark selective fishery has basically been put into place. And as many of the people have said, it absolutely, it's hurt the local communities. So with that said, I'm also in favor of option 1. I think that gives the most days. And if there's a way to add days to target, specifically the Upriver Brights at the latter end of that, without sacrificing impacts on the front end, I think that's the preferred. And so definitely option 1 for buoy 10, and West Puget Island also option 1. And really, that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Bruce. Appreciate that. So Randy? Randy, you can go ahead and come off mute.
I think I just did. Did you get me?
We have you. Thanks.
Okay, great. Well, I'm pretty much repeating everything everyone seems to agree on, and staff has certainly done in the last 3 or 4 years a pretty good job of figuring out how to protect the upper river and its fisheries. Mark Select Fishing has become a tool in the toolbox to do that. You know, I'm kind of with everyone else. That's not my preference. I don't like necessarily Mark Select Fishing, but as anglers, we've had to become used to that throughout the different seasons. So it sounds like everyone on this chat understands why that has to be done. And after several years of it, I think some of our consumer customers out there are realizing more why it has to be done, but there's still a big block of anglers that are pretty upset with it and don't necessarily think it's necessary, really don't understand why it's happening. But it is, and we're all trying to make the best of it. So my preference is number 1 for Buoy 10, West Puget Island number 1. And let's hope we get more fish than is expected, and our fisheries are robust and everyone is able to, you know, do well with fisheries this year. So good luck, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, Randy. Appreciate that. All right. Before I jump into round 2 with anyone who's had an opportunity, I just want to see anyone we haven't heard from yet. And then it's going to be a little bit of I won't say free for all, I'll still manage it, but we'll just kind of use up our time. And so anyone online, if you've already spoken, if you have more to add to the conversation or have questions, you can raise your hand. Otherwise, I will circle back to others, including in the room, if anyone else wants to speak. But I do see one new hand I'll go to first, and then we'll start sort of round 2. So it looks like Justin, you can go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Okay, great. I'd just like to ask for better in-season sockeye run updates. Like, you know, we've had some really good sockeye runs, and the lower river, I mean, I get that we've met our allocations preseason, but postseason, there's a huge differentiation between what we're catching and what we would be allowed to catch, you know, had we got some in-season run updates. So yeah, that'd be my biggest request, because I enjoy being out there in the summer, plunking for sockeye, you know, with the family. So yeah, that's all I got.
Thanks, Justin. Before I answer that question, do you have a preference on start date?
Yeah, I mean, the start dates are okay. They all come in, you know, around the same time. So the sockeye season, that's the problem, is it's pretty short. They kind of, you know, just flow through that river. And I know that that's one of the problems for in-season run updates. But I mean, I feel like if we have a season open early, you know, there's not going to be a lot of sockeye around anyway. And so I don't think there's a ton of impacts being eaten up with that early season opening.
Okay. So I think trying to answer your question, I'll take a stab at it and see if Jeff or anyone else has anything to add. So sockeye is one of the stocks or species that's a little more problematic on forecasting. It has a lot more, I guess, complicated life history. So that adds challenges. You have different age structures from different lakes or in the rivers and from different stocks, and then they're, you know, less near shore oriented in our marine waters. So our variables that we get from NIMS don't maybe help as much with forecasting. So that's why you've seen maybe the forecast being off. We just have more uncertainty on the preseason forecast. That being said, we're always trying to move the ball forward. So we're hopefully moving in the right direction on our additional tools that we're using. That being said, in season, our first opportunity, it is a compressed, you kind of hit on it, a compressed run timing. So when we get to June 30th about, we pretty much hit half the run right then, and then it tails off pretty quick, much like the buildup was pretty quick. So we have USV Oregon TAC that updates the run size, and those, once we hit that number, we're usually pretty dialed in season on the abundance, and it can shift a little bit. Obviously last year was a record return, and so it was like you don't want to expect a record when you're working with abundances until you see it. So that was a little bit of a challenge as you have been building abundance, but I'd say generally what you see preseason for opportunity as compared to preseason forecast to postseason, most often, some of that's built around river conditions not being as conducive to catching sockeye and or the forecast is off. But those 2 years that are flagged in there, 2020 and 24, we definitely hit the recreational allocation, no problem. And that's where the challenge this year comes. So Jeff, what did I miss, or what do you want to flag?
I think you did pretty well there, Ryan. I mean, the conundrum there is precisely the compressed nature of that return and the fact that Bonneville Dam is the counting tool that we have to be able to provide updates for that return. They don't know, those things don't necessarily align in time very well. By the time you know with good certainty what the run is shaping up to be, those, by definition, those fish are not available in the Little River for fisheries in the same abundances that they were before that. So that's part of the challenge.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. Justin, I hope that helped a little bit.
Yeah, it helped. I understand it's a challenge. So I just wanted to put forth that request for, in-season updates if possible, possibly even like emergency meetings so we can have an opening if, we're running ahead of forecast, or, even taking like angler catch data and being able to put together a model. I know that's been asked before, and I know that it's challenging, but yeah, there's probably some ways that we can do it. So that's just my request.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. And then I can assure you, we are looking at it almost on a daily basis. And yeah, if we have opportunity for additional harvest, we'll consider it. All right, now I'm working round 2, I promise. So Francis, go ahead. And then I see Randy, I see your hand, so I'll add you to the list. So go ahead, Francis.
Hey, I'm back. Sorry, back reception here. I just wanted to finish off with a few thoughts before I got cut off. I'm not how far I got, but I think the March select days down at Bowie 10 has been covered pretty well. I heard Jeff saying something along the lines that SRW herb may be the constraining stock, and the way we're kind of going about this, I think there's a very high likelihood that would happen again long before we hit the cap on LRH. But I just have a hard time understanding how putting 47 days of non-select where virtually all of the accrued impact is SRW selective, okay? Herb SRW. I'm not saying they're all Snake River fish. They're not. And especially with the effort shift that we have created, the models just can't keep up with what that reach is capable of doing. And so I made this analogy on the iFish board a couple of weeks ago. This season setting is it's like making sausage, okay? But it's a 350-mile sausage, as I heard earlier. It's 350 miles to the reach. If you squeeze on one end of that sausage, that meat doesn't just magically disappear. It's going to go somewhere else along the length of that sausage. And so when you're compressing more and more of the fleet into a smaller area, the impacts just are vaporized that much more quickly. Oh, am I still on, or did I get knocked off?
Good. You're good.
Okay. And so I would just I'll go back to 47 days of non-select when it's all herb selective for impact versus 6 days. There's a huge imbalance there. And I think it'll be harder for you guys to manage that in the setting of the effort shift that we have created. And so just be mindful of that. Give people a reason to choose a reach so that we spread out, and then give them a reason to stay in the reach that they're in so that all of the impact isn't burned up in one little area. Okay? And thank you.
Thank you, Francis. Appreciate that. And like you said, we are and will be mindful on effort shift. I think that was one of the things we said we would consider upon any modifications as we go to April Council. But thanks again, Francis. See, just checking. I have a few hands in the room. And so here's the list I currently have, and we've got till 2. So I've got Randy, we've got Bill and Greg King and Robert.
I have one question.
And then Kyle. Anyone else? All right, David. And I think I see Robert Kratzer as well. Okay, we'll see how that works out. Randy, go ahead. Randy, you can come off mute if you have anything else to add. Okay, Randy, I'll assume your hand is just stuck up, and otherwise come off mute if you actually had, if you did want to speak. Okay, I'll move on the list. So Bill, can you snag that? Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thanks again. I got a couple questions now that we've all kind of seen where we're opinions are at for our options on these things. Last year we modeled fisheries to September 3rd, correct? Okay. This year you have expensive days going into the 6th, which is a Saturday. Why? Okay.
Post Labor Day, they're not very expensive. Post Labor Day, they're not very expensive.
Yeah, are you talking buoy 10? I missed that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just, trying to
fraction.
save those extra, 3 days, and you have it ending on a Saturday, which is a weekend. It's kind of big. But maybe, and last year you modeled to like a Monday or a Tuesday on the 3rd.
Day after Labor Day.
Right? Right. And now we're going a full, like almost, what are we at? Like a week after Labor Day? Yeah, almost a full week. And I don't know, this is more things that have gone into probably what like Kratzer gonna say, and I'm like gonna lean towards like mixing around this non-March select options. Maybe start spreading those non-MSF days into the month instead of, that whole period to the 6th. This is all new to me that you're modeling fisheries off of thermal block possibilities now. And that's going to equate to a certain number, whether it's like in your modeling or not, and you may not have that number. But I just did a quick, Google search, because that's what we do when we start to be like, well, the opportunity kind of is interesting right now. 2022 had a snowpack in the east portions of all the Columbia regions of 83% on the average. 2023 was 128. 2024 was 133, and so far for 25 we're at 163%. Then you already got it. So your likelihoods of having a thermal block this year are pretty low because they didn't happen
Sure.
Yeah, let's
right?
hope.
Sure, sure.
Bill,
Fingers
last
crossed,
year
right?
was the
Because
first
that's how
year we
it's
didn't have
going to, you know,
Yeah.
make sure. Yeah.
Last year was the first year we didn't have a thermal block in like a long time.
We didn't have a thermal block in 23.
Yes, we did.
Where we didn't,
And in 22.
I don't.
yes, we
We
did.
gotta
but did
And in
we,
21, yes, we did.
Can't.
So,
but did we adjust fisheries based on that?
we closed fisheries on an
Yeah.
emergency closure in 22.
Correct.
We had like, and then we took drastic actions in 23 to make sure we didn't. So I think not counting, modeling fisheries on not counting on a thermal block, right? Like the number one thing we heard, right, and I'm not trying to like shut you down and I'm not trying to do these things, but the number one thing we heard after 22, right, guys, the number one thing I heard, right, the number one thing we heard, right, was predictability and stability, right? Now, I get it, right? We are trying and we would like to have as, like I'm telling you, we want to have as long and as like robust a season at Bowie 10 and throughout like the river as possible, but as possible comes within that like predictable and stable caveat as possible, because what we don't want to have to do is call a meeting on August 28th to shut it down on August 31st. Right? And planning a season, preseason, assuming that there's not going to be a thermal block, when in most years, like the available snowpack, 50,000, right? Like, what is the temperature in August, right? Is it going to be hot? Probably. Does that mean they're going to be a thermal block? Probably. Right? Plan for that. And then if we can liberalize, you know we're going to do it, right? But don't plan for it not to set up. Because I'm telling you, last year was about the first year it hadn't happened, like, that I can remember.
Okay, I get that.
By a little bit.
Well put. But we're having a real huge issue for the entire fishery as a whole.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, and you guys are gonna pay the price, and not just like me, but everybody else is gonna be pissed off at the whole big picture, why we're on a hatchery only. We're basically spring Chinook fishery in and I'm just telling you that that's really hard to keep going down that road unless you can find someone. It worked too well last year, so.
There are options.
Yeah, I know, there's other options,
That
take
don't do
away
that, right? I mean,
days, take away fishing, and now we just need to kind of find a middle.
right, I mean, when we're trying to do that, but, like, I mean, so there are options available that don't do hatchery only.
Yeah,
Right?
that's not gonna work, I know. I get
So,
it.
I mean,
Why do the other
people
options?
people have become really good at catching Chinook at Bowie 10. And that is, and throughout the whole river, frankly. People are really good, and it is a really popular fishery. And when you put, and the fall fisheries are really popular, and when you put really popular with really good, right? And then you add the thermal block, right? I'm not trying to like, I'm just trying to let people know, right? This is something that is, really a beast of its own creation, right? It is intensely difficult to manage, and going back 25 years to a day where, or 15 years to a time when we could just, set it and forget it and open it up to non-mark only, that's not coming back.
Jim was talking about 16.
Yeah. So like the world is getting warmer, right? People are getting better at catching fish. Technology is getting better. The world's getting warmer. And fish are a limited resource. So
Tucker, I'm your biggest proponent.
yeah, so I'm just trying to let you know, like, we're working hard.
Yeah, we know that.
And like, I'm just trying to say, like,
Yeah.
cross-examination on what we're trying to do, I wanna like tone that down just a little bit. So, thanks.
Okay, that's well heard, that's heard here, okay?
Thanks.
Cool. But you bring up a great point, because we never used to open buoy 10 up until 16.
Yeah.
Well, no, yeah, thanks. But, you know, you're kind of asking why are those days past Labor Day in there right now? That was one of your questions. We've heard during these discussions and others in the past that a goal for buoy 10 is to get that into herb timeframe. That's what we're doing. That's why those are in there, right? We can back that back up, but that's counter to what we've heard as a goal. So that's what we were trying to do with some of that, is to get more in September when it's heavier.
And it's super cheap.
And they tend to be cheaper because people are, you know, it's after Labor Day for one, and people are moving upriver as well. Yeah, so that's why. And I have to say, I'm kind of hearing mixed messages around the room here today. I'm hearing that a lot of mark select at buoy 10 is not desired, but almost to a person, everyone has said they support the one option that does that. It's just like last year. So make it make sense.
Well, we're looking at the most.
I mean, there are several other options, and yet the trade-offs are fewer opportunity days.
It's last year plus 6 days.
Yeah, it's different than last year.
Yeah, I mean,
4 days.
it's not like we didn't do it. I mean, it's either time or it's or select. And you can't have it both ways, I don't think, so.
Yep.
Ryan, I'd like to say something if I can.
Who's that?
Chris Wynn.
Okay, I got you on the list, Chris. So I'm looking at the clock and I'm wanting to run through this round 2. It was great conversation. Don't want to shut that down by any means, but other people have other things to add as well. So Greg King, you were next.
So I forgot to make some comments about Reno. Bryce, I don't want your dog. You can split that lake in half and you still have a problem. It's gonna be a problem forever and ever. Unless you took, and I think if I saw an aerial view, there was some area outside on the south side of the bridge there. If you could make that for bankies and then still have an area for the boats, because I know those guys like to go in there and get those get in from there. That would be the only thing I could think of, and that's my suggestion. And then my other thought is, the old line used to be Tongue Point. If you moved it, I know we talked about this a couple months ago, Ryan. If we moved that back to Tongue Point from West Puget Island, does that give us any room, any leeway at all for non-mark selective?
It'd be less days for WPI to, if you move that down, it's less days. You'd be.
For buoy 10?
No.
Above.
For buoy 10, probably not a full day of non-mark. It's a partial, about a half day of non-mark, probably 2 days of mark selective in the meet. And then if the buoy 10 fleet swings up, you know, say above Tongue Point is counted with, you know, the area up to Warrior, then you'd be looking at maybe losing probably a day to 2 days there, depending on what was caught.
That's why we did that.
Yeah, because it's the same fleet that's fishing that.
Because that was the year of the blog. Anyway. Thank you.
Thanks. Robert, you're up. I'm gonna just run through my speaking list. 1 second.
The thermal block one was funny. So, I mean, who was at the spring Chinook meeting that said that we anticipate higher than normal catch due to parts of the low clear water conditions when we were setting up the seasons? Anyway, that's come up over the last 15, 20 years. And Jeff even said it first year you hosted the meeting. As far as the fall fisheries, I know I've asked time and again if we could model in some non-select coho in zone 5. I'm not doing it because I want to, you know, have more fish in the freezer. I'm doing it to try to add value to the recreational anglers' opportunities. There's impacts that we're not using in that fishery as far as LCNs, and I would just encourage staff to look at
maybe a one per year on a Friday or Saturday. It's warm water. We are releasing them once in a while. It'll never be a target fishery. It just adds a little more opportunity at a time when both departments are looking at fee increases across the board. And at the time when we've lost sturgeon, we've lost bag limits, you know, as far as, it used to be 2 Chinook up there, now it's 1. Steelhead, the list goes on, rockfish in the ocean. And so I don't know what it looks like, but we could just entertain the idea and model it and see if we can do something like that. I really would appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. We've heard you loud and clear for many years.
Keep hitting the drum.
Yep.
And if you'll notice, it was settled in here, but we did
Yes.
not say that that was not under consideration this year. Should tell you something.
Yeah, just wanted
And
for the years,
hypothetically, it would be an in-season call.
I would work with anything.
That's as much as I can say.
10 years.
So going down my list, just, so I got Kyle, then David, then Robert Kratz, then Chris Wynn, and Butch Smith.
15 minutes left.
Yep. I think that's almost the list that we'll have. So Kyle, go ahead.
So my question was, you know, back when Robert was saying, we used to have a 2 fish limit up in Astoria. What were the fish numbers 20 years ago? And how much the decline have the states combined actually not, I mean, put in like a certain amount of fish, or I know money isn't easy to get to anymore and I don't want to get taxed anymore, or fishing licenses go up anymore. But the amount of fish you put in, the states put in, or maybe a better way of doing it, the biology sense of things, to get a better return, like what we used to have. And is there any way, because the economic value that we're losing everywhere else, can we throw that money up there? Not that you're going to get it, but I mean, is it amount of the fish that we're putting in? Is it the survival rate of the amount of fish that we're putting in to get a better stock, to make fishing better?
Abundances are variable. If you go into our joint staff reports, we've got some nice plots of time series there. You can just see how abundances go up and down over time. So I'm not an expert on hatchery production region wide. I don't know that there's been huge changes or reductions in hatchery production. You know, a lot of these fall Chinook stocks are wild stocks as well. So keep that in mind. So, you know, I think, you know, understanding that abundance changes, on some cyclical patterns, the biggest shift we've seen is the fishery performances, both numbers of participants and catch effectiveness. That's what's changed most. You know, it's a supply demand concept, right? The supply is variable, the demand just keeps going up.
Yeah, I know it's a lot easier to purchase a boat nowadays. And I mean, you just pay a couple $100 a month and you're good to go and you're fishing. But yeah, so I don't know what it is. I was kind of thinking a different route, you know, the amount of the stock we're putting in, or what, to maybe produce more, or maybe we have to go to that level. I don't know. I'm good.
Thanks, Kyle. Yeah, Charlene, go ahead.
So I think in answer to some of your questions, like the hatchery production has decreased down here, right? I mean, like we just finished like a new Mitchell Act opinion, which funds a lot of hatchery production down in the Low River, like Bryce and Jeremy worked on that in depth. So if you want to talk more with them afterwards on that, like I think they would probably welcome that, but it has decreased, right? And it's not easy just to go through and produce more because we're restricted by the biological opinion that NIMS has provided to dictate that production, for the states. So there's legal ramifications of going outside the production that we are limited to at this.
There's funding issues.
Well, there's some funding issues too. On top of that, we've been held to the same funding source, same funds for Mitchell Act for a decade or more.
Wow.
It's congressionally appropriated. You have to, it's an act of Congress to put more money towards that.
But I mean, if Washington came up with a way for people buying fishing licenses, fund hatcheries, I mean, I would sign up for that in a heartbeat.
I think that's, yeah, I think that's worth considering. I think we'd be happy to talk about that more in sort of a separate conversation. Probably showing time.
Originally, I wanted to do it back, so I think if we want to have that, we're gonna have to be.
Yeah, wages go up, the cost, like I say, the cost per fish is gonna go up, but you're only given a dollar amount to produce the same amount of fish,
Yeah.
at which you can't produce the same amount of fish because you don't have the dollars to produce that fish. So, okay, that's crazy.
Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna bump, Butch Smith up. We haven't heard from him yet, and then after that, it'll be, David, then Robert Kratz, then, Chris Wynn. So Butch, you're up next.
Sound check, am I all right, Ryan?
Yes.
Okay. Butch Smith, Ilwaco Charter Association. Appreciate Oregon and Washington staff for all the work that went into this. This is essentially like being the only Twinkie at a Weight Watchers convention at Buoy 10 anymore. Too many people and not enough fish. And so the challenges of the staff trying to account for people showing up and leaving to other places is difficult at best. So I from the association, we support the longest fishery, which appears to me be option 1. This is the best you guys have come up with. I appreciate that. It might not be the best what we like, but it's what we have to do to live within the guidelines. Tucker, love the passion, buddy. I enjoyed that. And so recognizing what we have to deal with is what we have to deal with. I will say, I am sad what Buoy 10 has become, because it hasn't been that many years ago. The same amount of fish would have been a 2-fish limit from August 1st to Christmas Eve. But it is what it is. Until we address some of the real problems, this is the way it will be. Fish production is one of them. Or a few years ago, we were producing 24 million tules, and now we're producing 11. So there's a lot of things that have ended the demise, or kind of the demise of where we're at now. But we're still fishing. We still have opportunity. Both Ilwaco and Astoria and Hammond and Chinook and Warrington are able to create some tourism, and that's the main thing what our communities need at that time of the year. So I appreciate all your hard work, and thank you for Ryan for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Yep. Thanks, Butch. Appreciate your input there. Moving down the list, I got David Sass is next. So mind passing the mic down. Thank you.
Thank you. I was gonna talk about the Drano situation. So if there's that much violence and that much confrontation, do you think should be a segregated fishery? As in even days, boat only, odd days, bank fishermen only? I mean, I have no idea what goes on up there, but just a thought. I know I wouldn't want a sinker come flying at me, hit me in the head or in the arm or something. That's all I've got.
Thanks, David. Rob, let's see. Robert Kratzer, you're up next.
Yeah, I was just curious and looking at that, and you hear a lot about the non-March select and the March select. And in option 1, last year it was like 4 days or 5 days of fishing. This year we have it scheduled for 11. And I know that I know those last 11 days give us a little breathing room because they're not very expensive. Is it possible to look at taking some of those 11 days and moving them into the 8/1 to 8/26 days, just like a day here or 2 days here, kind of spread them out just a little bit through there? I think it'll keep the fleet around there a little bit more and keep them more interested in that fishery versus just having March Select for the whole 26 days? Is that a possibility to model that and look at it, see if it would do anything?
Anything's possible. Yeah, I like to believe that, so. I guess I'm an optimist there, but yeah.
Those post Labor Day days, though, aren't gonna feed.
No.
Unmarked days, in August, right?
Right.
So they're not equal. I'm just thinking to keep in
Yeah,
mind.
not enough of those days to buy a peak non-marked day, I guess.
Yeah, you would have to go into the meat of the fishery to grab one of those days, the tail ends, not a whole lot there.
Yeah. But appreciate the thought and the perspective. That's good to hear, though.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. This just was a thought.
Yep. And then we're gonna finish on time. So the last person I'm gonna have speaking is Chris Wynn. Chris, star 6, is it? Come off mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't have a whole lot to add. I just, in looking at those sockeye seasons, they tend to come through on that earlier portion. Am I correct? A little bit earlier in June? There's not a whole lot of real opportunity in, mid to late July.
Correct.
Yeah, that's kind of how it plays out. July there.
Right.
Through.
And are you looking at a 1 sockeye per day limit for both of those, or just the one with the longer season?
Both will have the same limit approach. It's technically 2 salmon, but it's really only a 1 sockeye or a 1 steelhead approach. So not 2 sockeye only. So we're just dropping the sockeye.
Okay, well, I guess I would support the first option, the shorter, earlier option. And then 2, I get that there's a lot of hard feelings by people who enjoyed the glory days of Buoy 10 and all that, but I'm going to go back to what Harry said. We really don't want a repeat of 2022, and the dead zone is not dead, and there's a whole lot of bankies and a whole lot of kayak fishermen that are here to stay, and they're very good at it, and they deserve full access to their fishery as much as anybody else. And we get a lot of value out of each of the impacts up here. So I guess I just want to advise you to proceed with caution and do what you can. I appreciate what you have done, and that new Warrior Rock line looks great. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for the help on that, as other advisors as well. Really was a good conversation on the sideline to help with that new potential line. All right, so I'm going to wrap this up. Basically, I thought this was a really good meeting, productive meeting. We heard from everyone, I think, or everyone who wanted to speak up, we heard from at least once. I think this, more conversation style versus hearing approach. I'm seeing head nods that those in the room appreciated it, and I think it was a good trial. I wasn't sure how it was going to work out with virtual built into it, but I think we managed it just fine. Covered a lot. I know we'll see where we land collectively on approaches taken to the council process to finalize for the season. But this is just building the preseason plan. Then there's still in-season management, and you think this was a lot of work. That's a lot of work too. But yeah, I really appreciate everyone's time and interest in all of your collective fisheries and the energy. And we will, wait till Monday to look at the public comment portal input. So you all here that's already provided input can put it there as well. Obviously, Jeff and my email as well. We'll look at things as we need. If we have to follow up with any individuals, we may do so at our discretion. But with that, just want to thank everyone for your time. Any last words, Jeff?
Yeah, just want to echo all of that, Ryan. Thanks for all this today. This is kind of the format that we wanted to get back to, more discussion rather than presentation, testimony kind of stuff. This is what it's going to take to get through these challenges. Obviously, our fall fisheries are tough. They're different from our other fisheries, you know, the stock composition changes as we've talked about. It's a big area to try to manage, extremely popular and growing. You know, the only way we're going to be able to keep any of this kind of in line is with this kind of engagement, feedback from the public, and make sure that we're being responsive to what you're hearing, what we're hearing from you all, and hopefully you are hearing from us what the challenges are. Pretty sure you got that, because I think I heard every single person here a good understanding of what issues, you know, around this managing these fisheries can be. So I think everyone gets it. Doesn't necessarily help find good solutions for everybody, but you know, it's part of the journey.
Charlene, Tucker, anything else?
Yeah, I wasn't here at the beginning, so you probably covered this, but just in case, right? These are concepts that you as staff will take into the PFMC process. So they will likely not necessarily exactly look like this when they come out, right?
Exactly.
Okay, just want to make sure everybody's aware of that piece, that, you know, they don't necessarily come out fully baked as this exact thing out of the PFMC process. These are concepts that come in, and you know, they are moving parts within that process. So.
Yep. All right. With that, thank you, everyone. Drive home safe. Keep catch some fish if you're out there fishing right now. We'll be in touch.
Since this is the North Falcon's over, what are we looking at spring Chinook? Any idea